The last thing I felt in my first life was a fist. Then another one. I stopped counting somewhere around the 6th. I was 22 years old, lying on a dirt floor in a mountain hut that smelled like goat. And the man who had paid 200 yuan for me was explaining with his knuckles that I had not been polite enough at dinner. Funny thing, my last thought was not about him. It was about a piece of jade. Then, I woke up and someone was screaming about breakfast. Li Hua, you slut. Are you going to get up and make food or not? Your young master is starving to death here. I lay very still and stared at a water stain on the ceiling. I knew that stain. I had spent 18 years under that stain. The voice belonged to Wang Lei, my adopted brother, a 19-year-old boy with the body of an ox and the survival instincts of a boiled cabbage. And the year, if the calendar on the wall was not lying to me, was 1972. So, not dead, rewound. Let me lay out what my first life looked like, because it explains a lot about what I did in the next 10 minutes. The Su family picked me up when I was small and raised me as free labor. I cooked, I hauled coal, I emptied the chamber pots. I got up at 5 to light the stove so that 4 other people could wake up warm. And I did it in winter, in a room with no stove in it, for 11 years. The rule of that house was very simple, and nobody ever said it out loud. There was 1 bowl of good food and 3 children. And I was the one who carried it in. At 16, I tested into a clerk job at the city machinery factory. I handed every fen of it to my adoptive mother, on the last day of every month, with both hands, because that is what a good daughter does. She would count it in front of me every time, as though the number might have changed on the way home. At 18, they took my job placement and gave it to Wang Mei and shipped me to the countryside in her place. 4 years I mailed money home from a village in the northwest out of an 18 yuan workpoint settlement, and every single letter that came back was about how much they missed me and how expensive things had become. At 22, I looked 35. I had lost 2 teeth, my hands had gone the color of the tools. My adoptive father, in that same period, was promoted to deputy director of the factory. They were not poor. I want that clearly understood, because for years I told myself they were, and it made it bearable. There was money in that house the entire time. There was a bicycle. There was a wireless. They were not poor. They were farming me. When I finally came home, they sold me to Zhouguo in the mountains for 200 yuan. And Zhouguo beat me to death in under a year. The jade came later. My soul hung around long enough to hear the truth. I was not theirs. I was somebody else's, and I had been swapped as a baby. And the proof of who I was had been a jade pendant that came with me. Wang Mei had that pendant now. And 2 years from today, a family named Shen in Beijing would trace it, find her wearing it, and take her home as their long-lost daughter. They would give her my parents, my name, my 18 years. The door burst open and hit the wall. Aulei filled the frame, all shoulders and no neck, arm already cocked. Are you deaf? You stupid, I got there first. I have never in my life enjoyed anything the way I enjoyed that punch. The strength from my old world had come back with me. Not all of it. My body was a stick of dried bamboo and it screamed at me the whole time, but a fraction of that strength was still more than enough for a boy who had never been hit back. You are the one who wants a beating, I said. And then I gave him one. He went down on the 2nd hit and stopped making words on the 4th. I stood over him breathing hard, arms shaking, and I felt fantastic. Then I went to the kitchen and cooked noodles. For me, 2 eggs in them, from the little bowl of eggs that were kept exclusively for Wang Lei. Because Wang Lei was a boy and I was a mouth. I sat down at the table across from him while he was still on the floor and I ate every strand. He watched me. He did not say anything. That was new. Wang Mei came out of her room around then. My room. Technically, she had the biggest room in the apartment because she was the real daughter, and I slept in a closet with a winter cabbage. I walked past her, went into her room, and lay down on her bed with my shoes on. What are you doing? Get out of there. Mom, I have a job, I said to the ceiling. I bring home a salary. You bring home a report card with a 2 on it. Guess which one of us gets the bed? She grabbed my arm, I sat up and slapped her. Then I backhanded her, then forehand again, back and forth, unhurried, the way you would beat dust out of a quilt, until her mouth swelled up and she could not form the word mom anymore. And that is when I saw it. On her neck, on a red string, sitting against my sister's collarbone, where it had no business being. My jade. I took it. She grabbed for it and her nail opened a scratch across the back of my hand, and a bead of my blood went straight onto the stone. The rune disappeared. Sal. I want to be clear that I did not scream. Because I have standards. But I came very close. 1 second I am in a Beijing apartment holding a crying teenager by the hair. The next second I am standing in white nothing, alone, in total silence. In front of me was land, black soil, the kind of black that looks wet even when it is dry, laid out in a neat square that my old life's instincts measured at about 10 mu. There was a small pavilion. There was a spring, and the water in it moved even though there was no wind. And along one wall, on wooden shelves, were pills and jars and books stacked flat. I picked up a book. It was medicine. Not the kind you buy, kind that got burned in this decade for being old. Every jar had a little label on it saying exactly what it did. I knelt at the spring and drank a mouthful, and the ache that had been sitting in my bones since I woke up simply left. Like a coat coming off, I sat back on my heels in the middle of my own private 10 mu of dirt, in a country where a person could get in real trouble over half a kilo of unregistered pork, and I started to laugh. Then I stopped, because I had noticed something. To get in, I had needed blood. My blood. On the stone, which meant every single time I wanted to use the most powerful thing I owned, I was going to have to open my own finger. Cool. Love that for me. I came back into the room and Wang Mei was still on the floor mid-howl, which told me the whole trip had cost about 1 heartbeat out here. Good. That was worth knowing. Her parents came home to find their son concussed, their daughter's face the shape of a steamed bun, and me eating their eggs. You little bastard, my adoptive father said. Only old bastards give birth to little bastards, I said. He swung. I put my foot in a place that ended the discussion, and when his wife came at me with a rolling pin, I introduced her forehead to the corner of the cabinet. Then the apartment was very quiet, and I finished the last egg standing up. May, bless her, ran for the police. 2 officers came. I met them at the door with my sleeve already rolled up. Here's a thing, I had 18 years to learn about this family. They were careful about faces, not about arms. My left forearm from wrist to elbow was a map of old cigarette burns and a bite scar, and the white line where a coal shovel had opened me up when I was 11. I let 1 tear come out. Only 1. More than 1 is greedy. Comrade, I said, look at me. Look at my arms, I am 18 and I weigh 40 kilos. Can I really beat all 4 of them? The neighbors did the rest. Neighbors always know. They had known for 18 years and never said a word, and now that saying a word was free, they could not stop. The officers left with a warning. For my parents. I closed the door, walked over to Wang Mei, and put a strip of tape across her mouth. Scream again, I said, and I will break your legs. Not today. Xiao, I will let you wonder about it. Breakfast the next morning was a new experience for everyone. Liu Lan cooked it. I stood in the kitchen doorway with my arms folded and watched her do it, and when she tried to slide the good bowl toward Wang Lei, I picked up his eggs and ate them off his spoon. She did not say anything. She just looked at her husband, and he looked at the table, and I understood the shape of their thinking exactly. They had already registered me for the countryside. They had done it weeks ago, quietly, and they were waiting for the notice to arrive so it would look like fate, instead of a decision. Going to the countryside is too good for her, my adoptive mother had said in my first life, in that kitchen, in that exact spot. Let her go dig. Fine, I was going to the countryside. I had actually decided that before I opened my eyes. Because here is the part they did not understand about me anymore. The countryside was not a punishment. The countryside was distance. Distance from the Su family. Distance from the Shen family. And about 900 kilometers of distance between me and anyone who might wonder how a factory clerk had suddenly acquired a jade pendant full of farmland. I just was not going where they wanted me to go, and I was not going alone. I went to see Yang Jing that afternoon. We had gone to school together. Her father ran the district educated youth office, which meant her father decided who went where, and Yang Jing wanted exactly one thing in this world, which was a job placement that let her stay in the city. I had one. I set it on the table between us. 1,000, she said, too fast, because she was 17 and terrible at this. 800. She stared at me. Nobody in the history of trading has ever opened by cutting their own price. 800, I said, and your father does 3 small things for me. 1. My assignment goes to Liao province, not the northwest. 2. I Mei and Wang Lei get registered for the countryside this week. 3. It is all done by the book. Age eligible, no work unit, perfectly ordinary paperwork, nobody's name on it but the regulations. She thought about it for 4 seconds. He will want to know why. He will not, I said. Nobody asks why when the paperwork is clean. I walked out with 800 yuan in an inside pocket, plus a handful of cloth and cotton coupons she threw in because she felt bad, which is a very expensive feeling to have in front of me. The Northwest is where they sent me the first time. 2 years of hauling water uphill on a shoulder pole. I was not doing that again. Liao province had mountains, mountains had game, and game had a market. I spent the rest of the day buying cotton quilts, padded jackets, canned food, enough of it to make a mule sit down and cry. 2 days later, my adoptive mother made chicken soup. This is a woman who had not cooked me a hot meal since I was 9. She set it down in front of me with both hands and she called me hua hua, which I had never once heard out of her mouth. I looked at the bowl. Then I stepped into my own head and let the space tell me what was in it, which is a thing it does if you look at something and want to know. Not poison. I checked twice, because I wanted it to be poison. Just sleeping powder. So I drank it. All of it, 3 bowls, loudly, while she watched me with her hands twisting in her apron and her eyes doing arithmetic. Wang Mei came in halfway through and knocked the spoon out of my hand. Do you deserve to drink chicken soup? Apparently, I said. Somebody thinks I do. Then I went to bed. In Wang Mei's room. And once the apartment was dark, I picked her up out of the closet where she had been sleeping since I moved in, carried her to the bed, tucked her in nicely, and took the closet myself, too. At 2 in the morning I listened to my adoptive parents come in with a sack. I listened to them work the sack over the bed. I listened to my mother whisper, very kindly, to Jogu on the landing. After you take her, break her legs first thing, otherwise she runs. I listened to 200 yuan change hands, then I listened to them go back to bed, and I lay in the closet with the winter cabbage, and I did not sleep at all, because I was too busy grinning at the dark. In the morning, I came out and yawned and asked what was for breakfast. My adoptive mother's face did something I will be describing to people for the rest of my life. They got Wang Mei back 9 days later. It took another 100 yuan on top of the 200 to make Shogu give her up, which means the Su family paid 300 yuan total for the privilege of destroying their own daughter. Her leg was broken in the way legs break when nobody is planning on setting them. The doctor was very gentle about it. He said she would walk. He said she would always limp. I want to be honest about how I felt. I did not feel good. I felt paid. While they were at the hospital, I did 2 things. The first was the scrapyard. In this decade, people were throwing out textbooks because textbooks had become dangerous furniture. I bought a stack of middle school and high school books for the price of the paper and put every one of them into the space because I knew something the entire country did not know yet. Out. The college entrance examination was coming back. Not this year. Not next year. But it was coming back, and on the day it came back, the people holding books would eat the people holding slogans. The second thing was the money. The Su family kept a cloth bundle behind a loose brick in the wall of the main room. I had known about it since I was 12. I had never touched it, because in my first life I was an idiot who thought good behavior was a currency. In one night I put the entire apartment into the space. The bundle, the bicycle wheel, the good quilts, the sewing basket, the rice, all of it. 1,800 yuan and a fistful of coupons were in that brick. In the morning, I stood in the empty main room and screamed louder than anyone. I accused my adoptive mother directly, in front of 2 neighbors, of hiding the family savings so she would not have to pay for Wang Mei's hospital bed. The police came again. The police found nothing because there was nothing to find, because it was all sitting in a pavilion on 10 mu of black soil. Wang Mei came home from the hospital early. They could not pay for the rest. The educated youth office came on a Thursday. Li Lan was already saying my name, and the tone she used for guests when I opened the door wide, stepped out onto the landing where the whole floor could hear, and said it. I want to sever ties with this family. I had the letter written. I had the ink pad. I pressed my thumbprint on it in front of the office cadres and the neighbors and a woman from the 3rd floor who had brought a stool. I put a notice in the newspaper. It cost almost nothing. It was the best money I have ever spent. Done. I had over 2,000 yuan, a pile of coupons, no family, and a train ticket. I bought sugar. I bought tobacco. I bought liquor, not because I drink, because in a village, sugar and tobacco and liquor are not luxuries, they are currency, and I was about to walk into a place where I would need to buy things that money cannot buy. 2 big bundles went on my shoulders. For show. The other 9/10 of it went into the space. That was the first rule I made for myself, standing in a Beijing alley with a jade pendant warm against my collarbone. Whatever the space gives me, the village has to see a reason for it. Always a reason. Always a boring one. Wang Lei cried at the station. Sobbed, actually, a 19-year-old ox of a boy wailing into his mother's coat, because his assignment had come through for the Northwest and his father had discovered that the one thing the educated youth office would not do was change it. Dilan got hers a week later. A formal criticism, delivered at her work unit, for insufficient ideological awareness in the matter of her children's rural service. They made her read it out loud. Wang Mei did not go anywhere. Wang Mei got an exemption, on account of the leg. Congratulations, I thought, watching the platform slide away. You are all exactly where you put me. The train took 2 days, hard seats, the kind where the wooden slat finds your spine and stays there. Our car was all educated youth, all 18 or 19, all wearing the big red paper flowers they pin on you when they send you away. Some of them were singing. Give it 4 months. I got to know a few of them because they were going to my county. Lin Lei, cheerful, useless. Tao Bo, quiet. Zhao Ting. And then 2 girls, Chen Fang and Jia Yu, both assigned to Qingxi County, same as me. Chen Fang got to work about 6 hours in. Xia Yu had opened a paper packet on her knees. Steamed buns, a boiled egg, a little jar of pickle with sesame oil in it. Actual food. The kind of food a family packs when the family is not sending you away, they are sending you off, which is a completely different thing. Chen Fang's chopsticks went straight into the jar. Sisters share, she said, chewing. I would rather not, Ye Yu said, which for her was practically a slap. That was all Chen Fang needed. She stood up in the aisle and got loud. Look at this. Look at her. Little capitalist miss. Sesame oil is it? Some of us are going down to the countryside to serve the people and some of us are bringing our capitalist habits along. Half the car looked at Lai Yu, and I watched a 19-year-old girl fold in on herself like a paper lantern because in this decade, that word was not an insult, it was a lever, and everybody in that car knew it. I did not want to move. I had a whole plan about not making friends. I moved anyway. Comrade, I said. Say that again. I said, you put your chopsticks in another person's food without asking. She refused. Now you want to label her. I let my voice carry, because if you are going to do this, you commit taking what other people have worked for, by force, because you think you are entitled to it. Comrades, what is the technical term for that? Because to me it sounds like exactly the capitalist exploitation and oppression we are all going down to the countryside to overcome. Silence. Then a man near the window laughed, one hard bark, and the whole car turned like a field of wheat. Chen Fang sat down. Her ears went red and stayed red for about an hour. Yeah, you looked at me, the way you look at weather. I have a boiled egg, she said, at last, in a very small voice. I know, I saw, it is a nice egg, you can have it. I will take half. That is the entire origin story of the most important friendship of my second life. Half an egg, on a train, in exchange for a public accusation of ideological deviation. Very romantic decade. I did not go to the Shen family before I left Beijing. I want that on the record, because later on people made a lot of assumptions about it. I knew the family name, Day. I knew roughly where they lived. I could have knocked on that door with the jade in my hand and been sleeping under silk that night. I did not knock, and the reason was not noble. Day. Kive, the reason was that they had lost me, and 18 years later they had not found me. And when a fake showed up wearing my jade they were going to open their arms and take her in without ever checking. I was not going to go begging at a door like that. Let them look. Let them keep looking. Kuaiji County came up out of the flat brown at noon. Longgang Commune. And under the commune, a village called Yutu, which had 800 and change people in it. One road, no electricity, and a brigade leader named Li Sheng who was waiting at the collection point with an ox cart and an expression of professional patience. He watched the new educated youth come off the track. He watched them look at the ox cart, and the mud, and the mountain behind the village, and he watched the exact moment each of them understood. Then he watched me pick up my bundle and put it on the cart with one hand. That bundle weighed as much as a sack of rice. I saw his jaw come loose. Which unit are you from? He asked. No unit. Clerk, I said. I lift things. 50 yuan of settling money per person. That was the deal. 50 yuan and a spot on the king at the educated youth compound and an advance of grain against work points you had not earned yet. The advance was 5 jin of corn flour, 5 of sorghum, 10 of potatoes, 20 of sweet potato. I looked at that pile and did the arithmetic of a person who eats like I eat. And then I went to the supply and marketing cooperative and bought 30 jin of rice at 8 fen and 20 jin of white flour at 10 fen. And a cooking pot, for 5 yuan, all my own. What do you need your own pot for? The shopwoman asked. My cousin went down 2 years ago, I said. She wrote me. She said there is one pot for 17 people, and if you are last in line, you get water with the smell. That was my first alibi, and it cost me 5 yuan and one imaginary cousin. And it bought me the right to cook alone for the rest of my life in that village. Cheapest thing I ever purchased. Yayu appeared at my elbow while I was paying. I will contribute food with you, she said. And I will do the cooking. I am good at it. I am very good at it. Actually, that is not modesty. It is the only thing I am good at. Reader. She was not exaggerating. The village came out to look at us the way you look at a delivery. Old women mostly. Rained along the wall by the grain store. 20 of them, sitting on their heels with their hands in their sleeves. Nobody pretended to be doing anything else. This was the entertainment. They went through us one at a time. Out loud. That one is too thin. That one will cry by winter. That one is pretty. What is the use of being good looking? Can you eat a face? I heard that sentence roughly 900 times in the following 2 years and it never once got less funny, because every single person who said it eventually watched me carry something they could not lift. A woman near the end pointed her chin at my hands. City hands, she said, no calluses. That one will be owing the brigade grain by the 2nd month. She was not being cruel. She was doing arithmetic. That is the thing about a village that city people never understand. Nobody there hates you. They are simply working out, in public, at volume, whether you are going to be a producer or a mouth, and they will revise the answer the moment you give them a reason to. I put my bundle down, took the weighing pole off the cart, and set it back on its hook one-handed. The wall went quiet for about 2 seconds. Then the same woman said, and that single syllable was worth more than anything I could have said about myself. Chen Fang got in front of me at the grain window and looked at my rice. Look at this. Capitalist Miss Style, exactly like on the train. I slapped her. Then, before anybody's mouth could finish opening, I turned to the brigade cadre at the window. Comrade, she says buying grain from the brigade is capitalist misbehavior. I paid the posted price with my own money. So is the brigade condoning it? Should we go ask the commune whether selling grain to educated youth is a deviation? Li Sheng came over fast. He did not scold me. He put a formal warning on Chen Fang in front of everybody for slandering a comrade. And then he looked at me for about 2 seconds longer than he needed to. I have thought about that look a lot since. That was the moment he started sorting me into a different pile. The educated youth compound held 17 of us. 8 women on one kang, shoulder to shoulder, and the spot by the wall was the good spot because the wall is warm and the middle is where everybody's feet end up. Nobody said anything about who got what, so I walked in, dropped my bundle on the wall spot, and started unrolling my quilt. Nobody argued. Chen Feng got the edge by the door. The head of the women was Li Chunling, who had been down 4 years and had the flat calm of someone who has stopped waiting. She told me the numbers over dinner, and I wrote them on the inside of my skull. 17 educated youth in this brigade. 2 returns to the city per year, for the entire commune. Not per brigade, per commune. 4 years I have been here, said a man named Hegang, from the other table. I have watched 8 people go, 6 of them had somebody do. I looked around at all those red paper flowers pinned on all those coats and I thought, oh, none of you know yet. The first shared dinner was a lesson in how this place worked. Xiaoyu put a can of stewed pork on the table for the common pot, unasked. Nobody made her, she is simply who she is. And I watched her do it and thought, oh, you are going to get eaten alive here. The meat came out of the can and went onto a plate in the middle, and then everybody counted. There were 17 of us. There were 17 pieces. Somebody had done that division with a knife and a great deal of concentration before the plate ever reached the table. Then everybody watched. Everybody's chopsticks. I want to describe that properly, because it is the single most 1972 thing I ever saw. 17 educated adults, most of them from cities, all of them with school behind them. Chen Feng took a second piece. 4 people said her name at once, in exactly the same tone, and she put it back. Li Chunling did not even look up. There is one rule at this table, she said, to me. Since I was the new one. Whatever you bring, you share. Whatever is shared, you take one. If you cannot live with that, cook separately. I intend to cook separately. Everybody intends to cook separately, she said, for about a month. Afterward, I put newspaper up on the wall by my spot, the way everybody does for the draft. Old Beijing newspapers. You brought papers from home, somebody asked. My family kept everything. I said. They had, in fact, kept everything. In a cupboard, which was now in a pavilion on 10 mu of black soil, along with their quilts and their rice and their 1800 yuan. The next few days I spent buying my way into being ordinary praying. Straw mats from Zhengdashu at 2 mao each, 2 wooden cabinets from Go Hui, the carpenter, at 3 yuan each. And when he started organizing 2 men and a pole to carry them, I put one on each shoulder and walked out. He did not say a word, he just followed. I bought locks for the cabinets, which turned out to be the important purchase. Because within a week it came out that Sunday, Wan had been quietly working her way through Gayu's tin of milk powder. Then I went to see the brigade leader, with a gift. 2 packs of Dakianmen, 2 bottles of liquor, and a paper cone of brown sugar, which I put in Jumin's hands rather than his, because I had asked around and their daughter-in-law was 6 weeks from giving birth, and brown sugar for a new mother is not a treat in 1972. It is a status symbol. Zhu Min held that cone like a baby bird. GC. I would like permission to build a house, I said. At the foot of the mountain. I will pay for materials and labor. I would like it if the brigade could spare the workers and a mason for the stove. Li Sheng turned the liquor bottle around twice. Why the foot of the mountain? It is far from everything. Because I cook separately, I said, and I would rather not do it in front of 15 hungry people every night. That was true. That was completely true. It was just not the whole truth, which is the most useful kind of true there is. He gave me the land. While the house was going up, I still slept at the compound. And the compound and I had some things to work out. The first night Li Yu and I cooked in our own pot, flatbread with wild onion in it, nothing special, and the smell went through that building like a rumor. Chen Feng's hand came over my shoulder toward the pan. I did not turn around. I hooked her ankle with my foot and put her on the floor. If you reach into my pot, I said, I will take the hand off at the wrist and you can explain to the brigade why you cannot earn work points anymore. She screamed that I was violent. 8 women on a kang all agreed that I was violent. Then at bedtime I said, mildly, that anybody who got on the kang without washing their feet could sleep in the yard. And the same 8 women who had been so upset a minute ago discovered a deep and personal commitment to foot hygiene. Chen Feng held out for one night. She lasted about 40 minutes before Li Chunling threw a basin at her. That was the opening move in what the compound later called the pot war. And I would like to record it because it went on for 9 days and I have never enjoyed anything more. The rule at that table was that whoever cooked did not wash. There were 17 of us, so it went round. Shen Feng's turn to wash came on the Tuesday. She did not wash. She said she had a headache. The pot sat there. On Wednesday morning somebody boiled water in it anyway and everybody drank tea that tasted of last night's cabbage. Wednesday evening she still did not wash it, and by then it had a smell, and the smell had opinions. Here's where it became beautiful. Nobody made her. Not one person in 17 would touch that pot because touching it meant losing, and losing meant washing that pot every night for 2 years. Thursday, the pot was moved outside. Friday, somebody put a board over it. Saturday, Lee Chunling cooked porridge in a wash basin rather than surrender. And by Sunday, the entire educated youth compound was eating out of 2 enamel mugs, a wash basin and a lid, and every single person walked past that pot 4 times a day and looked at it and said nothing. Chen Fang cracked on the 9th day. She washed it at 5 in the morning, in the dark, at the far end of the yard, cursing the entire time in a low continuous voice like a kettle. Scrub that pot for 40 minutes. I lay on my spot by the warm wall and listened to it, and I want to tell you that I have never slept better. That is a village winter. There is no cinema. You take your entertainment where it is offered. In the morning Chen Fang did not get up. She lay there groaning about her stomach until the porridge was gone. Which was the point. And then she complained that nobody had saved her any. Lazy people really do have more bowel movements, I said, and got out the door before she found something to throw. The work points came for me on the 4th day. Du Wei was the accountant's daughter, which in a village of 800 people is roughly a duchy. She ran tool distribution. She handed our group the hose with the loose heads and the split handles, and she did it smiling. Something wrong, city girls? Yes, I said. I would like a bet. She loved that. Damn, everybody loves a bet when they have already fixed the game. 5 work points, she said. If you cannot make full points today, you give me 5 band now. Here's what she thought she knew. Weeding is capped. The best worker in this brigade tops out at 4 points a day on weeding, because there is only so much field and the field goes at the speed the field goes. It does not matter how strong you are. You cannot weed faster than a row exists. So she had put me on weeding, with a broken hoe. And the ceiling was 4, and 5 was impossible. I looked at the split handle. I looked at her face. And I thought about it for about 4 seconds. Then I went and found the brigade leader at the water gate. Uncle, move me to carrying our stairs. He straightened up. That is men's work, and it is on the embankment. And the embankment is paid by the load. I said, is it not, Teas? He stopped. Carrying earth is paid by the load. There is no ceiling on carrying earth. There is only the size of the basket and the fact that human beings are made of meat. He wrote it on the slate. I could see him deciding, while he did it, that he was going to come and watch. The baskets on that embankment were the big pair, the ones 2 men use with a pole. I took a pole and both baskets, and I did not use anybody's shoulder but mine. The first trip, the men on the bank laughed. The 4th trip, they stopped. Around the 11th trip somebody went to get the accountant. I did 10 points in 1 hour. Li Sheng came out onto the embankment personally and made me stop, and it was not because I had broken a rule. It was because the accountant was standing on the ledger table shouting that if this girl kept going, the brigade was going to run out of earth to move. 10 in an hour? Li Sheng said, to the sky, with his hat in his hand. Girl, do you know what you are? I did. Actually, I just had no intention of telling him. Zoe apologized in front of the whole work team. I made her do it twice. The first one was mumbled, and I am not a charity. Then I went up the mountain. I want to say something about the mountain, because the mountain is the reason I chose Liao province out of an entire country. This was 1972 in the northeast. The forest above Yutu village had not been hunted properly in a generation, because hunting takes a gun or it takes nerve. And the brigade had 1 shotgun and a lot of very sensible people. I made a spear out of a branch and a knife. I speared 6 fish in 20 minutes. Then I killed 5 pheasants with rocks. Which sounds like a lie and is not, because I have very good arms and pheasants are extremely stupid. I was field dressing the last one when I felt eyes. There were 2 men up the slope behind a stand of hazel. They were being quiet about it, and they were being quiet in a way that people who live in villages do not know how to be. I did not look up. I finished the bird, and on the wind, very faint, I caught one of them. Investigate her background first. She might be a spy from an enemy country. Wonderful. 4 days in the village, and I had acquired surveillance. I carried the fish and the birds down, and gave half of them away. 2 fish to Li Sheng's house, a pheasant to Zhu Fengxia, who had the loudest mouth in the brigade and was therefore the most valuable person in it. A fish to the old couple at the far end who had been down here since the 50s. That was not kindness. That was rent. When you are about to start doing a lot of things that people could ask questions about, you pay the village up front, in meat, and the village decides on its own that you are one of theirs. 2 days later I went back up and got serious. 3 hares, 5 pheasants, and 2 boar, each about 300 jin. I did the butchering inside the space, which is a sentence I could never say out loud to anyone. 10 mu of black soil and a pavilion, and me at a stone table with a knife, and outside a mountain in which no time at all was passing. The meat had to go somewhere. It could not be traced, so I went to the county. The black market in Qingxi ran out of an alley behind the tannery and cost 10 fen to enter, which is the funniest business model I have ever encountered. Before I went in, I did my face. Dark powder to muddy up the skin. Freckles drawn on with a burnt stick. Hair scraped back badly. Ugly as armor. Pretty gets remembered. In an alley where everybody is committing the same crime, the last thing you want is a face anybody can describe. Pork went for 1 yuan 20 a jin with no coupon. I moved just over 50 jin that first morning. 6 trips. Small loads, walking out and coming back. A girl who arrives with 50 jin of pork on her back is a girl with a story. A girl who brings 7 jin at a time is just a girl with a cousin who hunts. 60 yuan before lunch. Then I went and had lunch, and that is where I made my first real mistake in Liao province. The state-run restaurant did braised pork with potatoes. I ordered it. Then I ordered 4 large bowls of rice and 2 steamed buns. Did not think anything of it. I have eaten like this since the day I woke up in that apartment. Because whatever came back with me from my old life burns fuel like a furnace. And if I do not feed it, I get shaky and start seeing edges. The restaurant went quiet. Hua, old woman 2 tables over, stopped mid-sentence with her chopsticks in the air. I found out later she had been in the middle of arranging for me to meet her son. And I found out because she said the second half of that sentence out loud. Never mind. She would eat the family into the ground. Fine, great, excellent. And at the corner table, eating quietly and not looking at me in a way that was extremely obvious, were 2 men I had last seen through a stand of hazel. I finished all 4 bowls. If I am going to be a spectacle, I am going to be a well-fed one. The pork sale is how I met Zhou, and Zhu Xi is how I learned that in this decade, black eats black. He was the biggest buyer in that alley and he had a courtyard behind a locked gate. He agreed on 452 jin. At 1 yuan 20. He asked me to bring it to the courtyard. I brought it to the courtyard. Then the gate closed behind me and 4 men came out of the shed. 50 fen, Zhou Xi said, comfortably. 50 fen a jin, little sister, and you should thank me. Where else are you going to take it? Straight to the police station. There is a specific pleasure to this moment that I do not fully understand about myself. Someone has just decided they own you. They are relaxed. They are already thinking about dinner. 50 fen, I repeated. 50 fen. I looked around that courtyard, 4 men. 1 gate barred, or a shed with a chopping block outside it and a dog on a chain that had not barked once, which told me the dog was used to this. This was not the first time they had run this. It was not the 10th. How many people have you done this to? I asked. Zhu Xi found that funny. Little sister, he said, you are standing in my yard asking my numbers. I am, I said. Because I want to know how much of what is in that shed is mine now. He stopped smiling. He nodded at the nearest man. I broke that man's arm at the elbow before his hand was halfway up. It took about 10 seconds for all 4 of them and I did not go anywhere near the knife on the block because a knife would have made it a different kind of story and I had plans for this courtyard. By the end Shosi was on his knees in his own yard with his forehead on the dirt. Grandma, he said. Grandma, spare my life. I have been called many things. That one I kept. I took the 540 yuan he owed me. Then I went into the shed and took the strong box, which had 3,200 in it, plus coupons for cloth and meat, a wristwatch, a sewing machine, and a radio. Then I picked him up off the floor, brushed his shoulders off, and hired him. You are now my buyer, I said. You take everything I bring, you pay the honest rate, and you never see my face at that gate without an appointment. In exchange, nobody in this county ever finds out that 4 men in your yard got taken apart by a girl. He agreed so fast he nearly fell over. That relationship made both of us a great deal of money for the next 2 years, and it started with me robbing him blind, which I think says something lovely about business. Riding home in the dark, it occurred to me that I had a problem. It was 14 kilometers to the county, and I was doing that trip on foot. I could buy a bicycle. I had the money for 4 bicycles. I could not buy a bicycle, because a new flying pigeon costs 120 yuan and an industrial coupon, and an educated youth who arrives in a village on a brand new bicycle is an educated youth the whole commune wants to talk about. So I went to the county dump and built one. 4 yuan of parts. A frame with a bent fork I straightened with my hands, 2 wheels that did not match, a chain off something else entirely, a saddle that had been a saddle in the same way that a stump has been a tree. It took me a day. Somewhere in there I welded a bracket, and I did not weld it with a torch because I do not have a torch. I did it with what came back with me from the old world, and I did it behind a wall, and I will not be putting that in any report. I was walking at home at dusk when I felt eyes again. So I fell over. I went down on the road with a small cry, grabbed my shin and said, in a voice I have heard little girls use, "Oh no, I think my leg is broken." 12 seconds. He was very fast. A hand came into my field of view, and a voice above it said, "Let me see in." I took the hand, put my heel into the ground, and threw him over my shoulder into the ditch. Then I put my foot on his face. He did not fight back. That is the part I remember. A man goes into a ditch and his whole body knows what to do about it. And this one made his hands go flat and open instead. "My friend wanted to meet you," he said. From under my foot, with tremendous dignity, I moved the foot. He sat up in the ditch weeds, and I got my first proper look at Gao Yun. Tall, straight nose, a jaw you could hang a coat on. There was mud on one cheekbone and it was, frankly, doing him no harm at all. "I do not like your type," I said, and got on my terrible bicycle and rode away. That was a lie. I rode the entire 14 kilometers home regretting the mud, because I had put it on a genuinely excellent face and there is no excuse for that. The bicycle changed my standing in U2 village more than the 10 work points had. There was exactly one bicycle in the brigade before mine and it belonged to Li Shang and it wheezed. Mine wheezed too. That was not the point. The point was that a girl had walked into the county with nothing and come home with a machine. Xiao Bao's mother, who had spent 4 days telling anyone who would stand still that I was a useless city vase, arrived at my gate with a bowl of pickled radish and a completely new personality. Where did you get it, Huaha? Scrapyard. Built it. I spun the front wheel. See? The wheels do not match. That detail did more work than any explanation could have. Nobody who is lying puts a flaw in the story on purpose. She went away satisfied, and she told everybody. And for the next 2 years the answer to where did Li Hao get that was she built it out of garbage, which was true, and which conveniently covered a great many other things. Then came the boar hunt, and Chen Fang tried to kill me. I do not use that phrase loosely. The brigade organized a beat, up the mountain. 20 of us in a line with sticks and drums, and Chen Fang was the one on the flank with the noisemaker. And when a boar, the size of a coffee table, came out of the brush, she did not drive it uphill, she drove it at me. Everybody saw it. Nobody could prove it. Hi, and that is a very specific kind of neighbor to have. Xiaoyu was standing next to me holding a stick like a broom. I put both hands on her waist and threw her into the crotch of a pine tree, which she did not enjoy and which I would do again. Then I turned around and the boar was 4 meters out and closing. I went up. Boar are made low and they are made to knock you down and then work on you. So do not be where the low thing is. I got over the tusks and I came down with the machete on the back of its neck, and the head went one way and the rest went another, and the whole thing skidded to a stop in the leaf litter about a body length from where Chen Fang was standing. Chen Fang wet herself. I mean this literally, and I am reporting it because Dao Xiangken, who was 6 meters away, reported it at maximum volume to the entire mountain, and I did not have to say a single word for the rest of the afternoon. The rest of the hunt got better. I took 3 more, Zhao Yun and Wu Han, who had appeared out of the trees as if they had always been there. Took one between them. And I want to be fair, it was a clean one. 4 bore. The 2 strongest men in the brigade got a pole under one and could not stand up with it. I put one on each shoulder and started walking. The line went quiet behind me for about 30 meters, then somebody started laughing, and then everybody did, that enormous relieved laugh of people who have just watched something impossible and decided to be delighted instead of frightened. 900 jin of pork for 800 and some people. The distribution took until dark. Deng did it himself, at the drying yard, with the accountant on one side and the scales on the other, and every household in U2 village standing in a line that went round the wall. I have watched a lot of things in 2 lives. I have not often watched anything like that queue. Nobody pushed, nobody argued about the order. Old men who had not spoken to each other since a land dispute in 1961 stood next to each other, holding bowls. Children were sent to the front so they could see the scale pan go down. Meat came to that village 4 times a year. New Year, and 3 times if the year was kind. The brigade voted me 20 jin. I took 15 of meat and 5 of fat. There was a small noise along the wall when I said the word fat, and I did not understand it until Sumin explained it to me a week later. A city girl takes the lean. A city girl thinks fat is what you trim off. Fat renders. Tube. Fat keeps in a crock through a northeast winter. Fat is what makes 4 months of cabbage taste like food. Every old woman on that wall watched me choose the fat and nodded like I had sat an examination and passed it. That night, Lado's mother came back with her son. Lado was 23 and had the work point record of a decorative rock. She sat down on my bench and explained, warmly, that a girl alone out here at the foot of the mountain needed a man in the house, and that her Giaobao was very healthy. Ming got there before I had to be rude. Marrying into your family, she said, from the gate, is like jumping into a pit of fire, and everyone in this brigade knows it. Get your rock off her bench. That is the moment Xu Min stopped being the brigade leader's wife and started being something else. I had bribed her with brown sugar. She had decided to adopt me. Those are not the same transaction, and only one of them can be repaid. Meanwhile, 900 kilometers northwest, my brother was learning about water. I heard this later, in pieces, and I have assembled it lovingly. In Wang Lei's village, the well was 2 kilometers from the dormitory and the shoulder pole was not optional. His hands opened up in the first week. He cried under his quilt at night where the other men could hear him, and he wrote letters home demanding that his father get him out, and his father did not answer, because his father was busy. Zhou Si came to my gate in the 2nd week, which was a violation of our agreement, and I told him so through the door. It is your grandma, I said. If you do not open the door, I will kick it down. That is my line, said Zhou Si. It is a good line. 300 jin, of boar at 120, hares and pheasants at 2 yuan each, 730 yuan total. He rounded it up to 750 and looked very pleased with himself for doing it. That was the first time I understood that Josie was not afraid of me anymore. He was invested in me. Those are much better terms. On the way back through the county I stopped at the cooperative because a crowd had formed, and crowds are informative. Hua old woman was on the ground in the middle of it, howling. A man was backing away through the ring of people with her cloth purse in one hand and a knife in the other, and he was doing that slow half-circle with the blade that keeps 40 adults completely still. Hey. Her grandson was sick. That was the money for the hospital. She had it in the front of her jacket and he had cut the jacket. I came in from behind the crowd. He heard something and started to turn, and I took the knife out of his hand with my foot, and it went end over end into the wall of the shop. The second kick sent him about 4 meters. He landed on a display of enamel basins. I tied him with the rope off my own bicycle rack and handed the end to 2 men in the front row. Police station is that way, I said. Then I picked the purse up out of the dirt, counted it in front of everybody so nobody could ever say a number went missing, and put it into the old woman's hands. Comrade, your name, someone said. What is your name? What unit? I got on the bicycle. I heard it start behind me as I rode off. That noise a crowd makes when it decides on a story. She is truly a female hero, which is a lovely thing to have said about you, and is also, in a county where I was moving 400 jin of unregistered pork a month, an absolute catastrophe. Somewhere in a room I have never seen, my file came back. Li Hua, 18, educated youth, U2 brigade, background checked, clean, Beijing clerical worker, no unit affiliations, no foreign contacts, no relatives abroad, severed ties with her adoptive family by public notice. The organization's conclusion, which Jiao Yun told me about much later, was 1 sentence long. Nothing abnormal. Except that inside the normal, there is something strange. My house went up in 11 days, 3 rooms and a walled yard at the foot of the mountain. 200 yuan for materials and labor, which in U2 village made me approximately the wealthiest person under 60. It had a kang, a stove, a gate that locked, and no well, which was the only thing about it I did not like. Li Jiyu moved in with me. Chen Fang watched us carry our quilts out of the compound with an expression like a swallowed stone, and said nothing. Because ever since the boar she had developed a healthy relationship with silence. Xiaobao's mother, however, had a plan. I know she had a plan because she told her son about it in her own yard with the window open. And Yuto village has ears in the way that other places have weather. The plan was this. Start a rumor that Li Ha had been seen rolling in the hay with a man. Let it get around. A girl with a ruined reputation in 1972 has exactly 1 door left open to her, and Zhao Ao's mother intended to be standing in it. Then the house would be theirs, and the bicycle would be theirs, and Zhao Wao would never have to lift a hoe again. I want you to hold on to that, because I did. Decton. I knew the whole shape of it before the first word left her mouth. That is the best feeling in the world, by the way. Not winning. Knowing. Before it started I had a small piece of business at the cowshed. There is an old man in every one of these villages. In U2, his name was Chen Guang and he lived at the cowshed with his wife because they had been sent down, and sent down people were not allowed to have a house, or friends, or a name people said out loud. He had gone over on the path with a load of manure and he could not get up. He was mostly bone. When I got my shoulder under his arm he weighed less than my bundle had on the ox cart. I stuck a plaster on the ankle. It was not a village plaster. It came off a shelf in a pavilion, and it was going to have that ankle usable in 2 days. And I told him it was a Beijing thing, which he was polite enough to accept. Then I carried him on my back the long way round through the ditch line where nobody would see and left a pheasant on his doorstep. Girl, he said, at the door. You should not do this. I am a sent-down element. I thought about the water stain on the ceiling in Beijing. I have been rained on my whole life, I said. So I am the person holding the umbrella now. Eat the bird, his wife cried. I left fast because I do not handle that well. The rumor arrived 4 days later and it arrived properly. Not shouted, chappered, over the weeding, in that voice people use when they want you to hear them not saying it. Yu Min had the source inside of 2 hours, because Xu Min is the finest intelligence apparatus in the Northeast. Ap Pao and his mother, she said. Do not use the shovel, Hua Wu. I put the shovel down, beat them, she clarified. Just do not use the shovel. They are not worth a criminal file. They ran when they saw me coming. In their defense, that was the correct instinct. In their disfavor, they ran directly into Gao Yun, who was coming down the path with a bundle of firewood, and who took 1 look at the situation, put a hand into 2 collars, and threw them at my feet like a cat presenting a bird. He did not ask what they had done. He did not say a word. He picked up his firewood and walked on. I stood there for a second with 2 people in the dirt and my whole approach to that man permanently rearranged. Then I knocked a tooth out of each of them. And then I did the thing that actually mattered, which was not the tooth. Aunties, I said, to the 11 women who had come out to watch. You know, I have been thinking about why Xiaobao looks the way he does. He does not favor his father, not around the eyes. I let it sit for exactly 1 breath. So maybe I am not the one who ought to be answering questions about rolling in the hay. Dear, that village ran with it for 2 years. Zhao Bao was the son of a dog until the day I left. His mother invented 3 new illnesses trying to get out of the fields where people could see her. That is how you kill a rumor. Not by denying it. By handing the room a better one. Zhao Bao's mother came at me with her fists on the second day, in front of the whole work team, because she had run out of ideas. I let her get within arm's reach. Then I dropped. I went down clutching my chest, and I made my breathing go wrong in the way I had watched a woman in Beijing do it for real, and I got out 4 words in a thin little thread of a voice. My heart. The doctor said. The field went insane. Xiao Bao's mother went from aggressor to attempted murderer in under 3 seconds. Jing came at a dead run. Somebody shouted for water. Shimin got my head off the dirt. The brigade fined her 100 yuan on the spot, in front of everybody. And when she tried to say she would pay 20 now and the rest later, Li Xing said it would come out of her family's work points and their grain ration until it was cleared. That is the sound of a village closing on somebody. It is not loud. At home, IU brought me a bowl of water and looked at me with enormous worried eyes, and I felt so bad that I told her. I do not have a heart condition. She blinked twice. You faked it, dear. If I had not faked it, she would have gone crying to the commune that I attacked an old woman, and I would have been the one paying compensation. Now she pays me 100 yuan and everyone thinks she is a murderer. Xiaoyu sat down slowly on the edge of the kang. That is horrifying, she said. Yes. Teach me, Ji. I found out that night that she had learned to swear from the village aunties, which nearly ended me, and I found out something else. Before her parents were taken away, they had hidden things for her. Not much. Enough that if the wrong person ever searched that girl's boxes, she would be finished. I told her to bring me every piece of it, and I put all of it in a place where no search in this country was ever going to reach. I owed Gao Yun a meal after the collar business, and I do not like owing people, so I killed a goat and invited him. Cumin mutton, ribs, jiao, doing things with a wok that should require a license. He answered his own door with his shirt off. I would like to report that I looked away. I did not look away, dude in his doorway, and I looked at him. Thoroughly, from about the collarbone down to where it stopped being polite, and I took my time, and I did it with the expression of a woman inspecting livestock at a market. He turned a deep, even red and got a shirt. That was the day I learned that Jiu Yun could be made to blush, and I have not had a boring afternoon since. At the table he asked the question he had been carrying for 2 weeks. Where does it come from? The strength. I put down my chopsticks. There was a master, I said. He came through my street when I was small. He said I had good bones. He opened my meridians and taught me for 3 years and then he died. Died. Very suddenly. It was terribly sad. Gao Yun looked at Wu Han. Wu Han looked at his rice. Your turn, I said. You two do not chop firewood, are up that mountain every day and neither of you has ever brought down a load. You move in a pair even when you are relaxed. You are not educated youth. You are from a military organization. Wu Han inhaled a grain of rice. I let them recover and then I gave them the only advice that mattered. Behave like educated youth. Go out to the fields. Earn work points. Complain about the food. Right now the entire brigade thinks you are lazy Beijing boys with a rich uncle, and the day one of them decides you are something else, you are finished here. They were in the fields. The next morning, the aunties reacted to 2 young men in the fields, the way a pond reacts to bread. It got so bad that within a week there was an actual physical altercation between 2 families over whose daughter had rights to Wuhan, during which one mother made the case, at volume, that her girl had wide hips and would deliver easily. Wu Han, cornered, invented a father with no legs, a bedridden mother, 4 siblings, and a stated intention to demand a dowry from the bride's family rather than pay one. The crowd thinned considerably. Go Yun, watching this, said the following sentence out loud in the middle of a field in front of 9 women. It would not matter anyway. I cannot father children. I dropped my hoe. I had to put my hands on my knees. The field cleared in about 90 seconds and I gave that man a thumbs up across 4 rows of sorghum and he had the grace to look ashamed of himself. Li Wenwen did not get the message and turned up at his door that evening with a bowl of sugar water, at which point Wu Han explained to her, publicly and in detail, exactly what she was doing and how it was going. She did not come back. There was one man in the compound who was doing better than he deserved to be, and his name was Deng Jun. He had started orbiting Jiayu. Compliments. Carrying her basket, the whole apparatus. And behind him, feeding him, was Chen Fang, who had made very sure Deng Jun understood that the quiet girl who cooked so nicely came from a family in Beijing with a courtyard house. I saw the shape of it and I said nothing, because saying something to a 19-year-old girl about a boy is the fastest way to make her keep him. John. I went to the county instead. Winter parcels had come in, and cloth, and wool, and I had a bicycle now. 4 men stopped me in the alley behind the grain station on the way out. Hand over your belongings. They had knives. It is always knives. I took the knives away, which took less time than the sentence does, and then I went through their pockets on principle. 8 yuan. Between 4 of them. You are this poor, I said, and you are robbing people. Comrades, that is not a career, that is a hobby. Xia Yu, who had been standing behind me with the parcels, came forward and kicked one of them in the ribs. Not hard. Experimentally. I looked at her. The fox borrows the tiger's power, she said, with dignity, and kicked him again. Die. At the county dump I found high school textbooks, which I bought, and a lady's dressing table with a mirror, which I carried home on one arm. The dump keeper watched me do it, and then sat down. 2 days after that I found out about Dang Jun, the useful way. Dive coming down the hill path at dusk, and there was noise in the scrub, and the noise was Dang Jun and Lu Hong, a village girl, and neither of them was in a position to hear me stop walking. I went home. I said nothing. That evening, Dang Jun came to our gate with a paper of candy for Jiayu. No, I said, before she could open her mouth. Comrade Su, this is really between. You disgust me, I said. That is the whole reason. You do not need a better one. He left. You looked at me sideways for the rest of the night, and did not ask, and by the time she found out on her own, she had already stopped smiling at him, which was the point. My bicycle, meanwhile, had become a business. Sinu Fengxia's son was getting married in the spring, and a bride in 1972 wants a bicycle in the same way. A bride in any year wants a bicycle. And a new one is 120 yuan plus an industrial coupon that does not exist. 30 yuan for the work, I said. 6 for the parts, you get a bicycle. 36 yuan against 120 and an impossible coupon. She nearly kissed me. Half the brigade came to watch me build it in the yard. That was the point of doing it in the yard. I welded the frame joint behind a propped-up door, and I would like to state for any curious parties that I used a borrowed torch, and I would like to state it very firmly, and I would like to move on. Meanwhile my sister was learning about stairs. Wang Mei had been given an exemption on account of the leg, which meant she stayed in Beijing, which everybody agreed was the lucky outcome. Their apartment was on the 4th floor. There is no lift in a building like that. She went down those stairs to the tap in the yard 4 times a day for water, because her mother had discovered that a daughter who cannot go to the countryside and cannot hold a job is a daughter who can carry. Her hip had set wrong. It set wrong because they had brought her home from the hospital early, because there was no money, because the family savings had gone out of a brick in the wall and never come back. I am aware that I did that. I have thought about it in the way you are supposed to, and I have arrived, every time, at the same place. She wore my jade for 8 years. She took my job. She stood in a doorway while a woman explained to a stranger how to break my legs so I would not run, and she did not make a sound. Did not put her in that sack. I only made very sure I was not the one in it. Somewhere in the northwest, around then, my brother finally got through to the factory switchboard and asked to speak to his father. He was told that both his parents had been detained. Human trafficking, 200 yuan, a sack, and a witness named Zhu Guo, who had come in on his own 2 legs to confess, because a girl had visited him one night, beaten him half to death, and poured something down his throat, and told him the antidote came in 1 month, and only if she was in a good mood. I had promised myself I would leave my parents for later. That was later. The bear found me in the middle of October. Black bear, not enormous, which in bear terms means it only weighed as much as 3 men. It came out of a berry patch already committed, because bears in October are not thinking about anything except how few days are left. I want to be careful here, because this is the moment where I stopped pretending, even to myself, that what came back with me was a fraction of anything. I put everything I had into one hand, and I hit that animal in the skull, and the skull did not hold. I stood over it afterward with my arm ringing to the shoulder and thought 2 things in order. The first was that I had just killed a bear with my fist. The second was that the paws and the gallbladder were worth more than the meat, and I needed to get both out before the body cooled. Priorities are a personality. I was still up there packing when the shooting started, not hunting shots. Hunting is 1 bang and then quiet. This was a conversation, back and forth, moving downhill fast, and the rhythm of it was wrong for anything that lives in a forest. I went and looked, because I have never once in 2 lives been able to not look. 2 men were coming down the draw and they were both hit. One was dragging the other. Behind them, spread out and coming down in a proper line with proper spacing, were about a dozen people who were not from around here. They were not shouting. That is what told me. Villagers shout, soldiers call. These people came down that hill in total silence, taking turns to shoot, and I understood in 1 second exactly what Yuto village had growing on its mountain. The 2 hurt men were Gao Yun and Wu Han. I would like to say I thought about it. I did not think about it. I came in on the flank at a full run and a burst went across my path, and I let my knee fold and went under it, and by the time the man had corrected, I had the weapon. 10 minutes. I left 4 of them breathing on purpose, because the entire value of a captured spy is that he can be asked questions, and a dead one is just a heavy thing. Then I went and looked at my 2 idiots. Wu Han had one through the shoulder. He woke up while I was digging for it, and started to yell, and I hit him on the jaw and he went back to sleep. Deficient. Gay Yun was worse. Gay Yun had one in the muscle of the backside, which is not dangerous and is, if you are a proud man of 23, considerably worse than dangerous. I can wait for the county doctor, he said. You can bleed for 4 hours on a mountain, I said, or you can take your trousers down. It is entirely your choice and I would like you to make it quickly. He made it. He did not say one word the whole time, and he was the color of a cooked shrimp from the ears to the collar, and I dug out the bullet with the point of my knife and dressed it with something from a shelf that does not exist. Day. When it was over, he lay with his forehead on his arms for a while. Li Hua. When they ask where you learned to shoot, he said, into his sleeve, say I taught you. I stopped what I was doing. That man was lying face down in the dirt with a hole in him, and the first coherent thing out of his mouth was a fitted, well-made lie designed to keep me out of a room I did not want to be in. Nobody had ever handed me an alibi before. I had always had to build my own. All right, I said. The county police came up the mountain that night, and one of them decided to make a name. Comrade Liu. 30, very crisp, notebook already open, and she had opinions about a lone 18-year-old girl on a mountain full of foreign agents. 2. I want to introduce her properly, because that woman and I were going to be seeing a great deal of each other. You will need to come to the station. There are questions about how a girl subdued 12 trained men, and about why you were up there at all, and frankly about who you might be working. Comrade, I said. I said it politely. That is important. You eat grain, I said. The grain is grown by the people. I am one of the people, and I am standing here at 3 in the morning covered in somebody else's blood, having handed you 4 live prisoners and a radio set, and your professional instinct is to investigate me. Is that the standard now? Should the masses stop helping? Should I have left your comrades on that hill? Section Chief. A man named Calgon arrived at the top of that silence and heard the last half of it. He gave her a formal criticism on the spot. He made her write a self-examination. And then he came over and apologized to me personally, with his hat in his hand, which is not a thing that happens, and which I accepted graciously because I am occasionally capable of it. Dosi paid 2,000 yuan for the bear. He also gave me a box of old things for free, which turned out to be his way of asking for something. Nobody wants this junk now, he said. Scrolls, ceramics, a jade cup. Half of it comes from families getting turned over. I cannot move it. There are foreigners who will buy, but the foreigners pay in trouble. I looked into that box for a long time. Somewhere ahead of me, in a country I remembered and he could not imagine, this box was a house. Several houses. Get me more, I said. All of it. Any of it. Hey, I will take everything you can find and I will pay you honestly for it. And Joe C., listen to me. Never sell one piece of this to a foreigner. I would rather it sat in my cupboard for 50 years than left this country. He thought I was sentimental. That was fine. That week, in a hospital in Beijing, a nurse made a mistake with a blood type. Del. I was not there. I have put this together since, from what I was told and from what I worked out, and I am telling it now because it is the other half of my life running along beside me the entire time I was on that mountain. The Shen family's daughter needed a transfusion. The Shen family's daughter had a blood type that could not have come from either of her parents. They ran it again. Then they ran the parents. Then somebody very quietly pulled the nurse who had been on the maternity ward 18 years ago, and that nurse turned out to be the older sister of the grandmother of a girl called Wang Mei. She had swapped them. 2 babies, 1 shift, 1 lifetime. Day. And the real one. The one she had carried out of that ward, she had not sold and had not kept. She had put it down and walked away. The only thing that had gone out of that hospital with the real Shen daughter was a piece of family jade on a red string. The Shen family made 2 decisions that day. The first was to send the girl they had raised for 18 years back to the family she had come from. The second was to find their own. Wang Mei heard the whole thing through a door. That is the detail I love most about my sister. She did not get told. She stood in the hallway of a house that was not hers with her ear against the wood and listened to 4 adults decide her entire future, and then she went into her room and beat everybody to the punch. She registered for the countryside herself. Voluntarily. That afternoon, not to the village her real family came from, obviously. She had been to that village once and described it later as smelling like people. She registered for Qingxi County. Because a young man from the Cheng family had just been posted to Qingxi County for grassroots experience, and the Cheng family outranked the Shens, and Wang Mei had spent 18 years learning that the correct response to losing a seat is to find a better one. The Shens let her keep her clothes. They took the jewelry back. She sold the clothes on the Beijing black market for 1,800 yuan, which I will admit was well done, and got on a train south with a suitcase and a plan. She was 3 weeks behind me and heading for the same county, and neither of us knew it. I was busy with the snakes. The county police went up the mountain after the spy business looking for the transmitter, and they went up like men going to a meeting. No sulfur. No pulls. 1 shotgun between them and a great deal of confidence. Comrade Liu shot a python. Not killed. Shot. There is an enormous difference and she learned it immediately. Because a 6-meter python that has been annoyed goes from decorative to structural in about a second and a half. I was 2 ridges over when I heard the shot, and then the shouting. And the shouting had the wrong shape to it. Men shout in short bursts when they are working. This was one long note with no breath in it. By the time I got there, it had her from the knees to the chest and was working on the arithmetic of her ribs. 8 police officers stood in a half circle. Not one of them was doing anything, and I want to be fair to them about that, because there is nothing to do. You cannot shoot into a coil. You cannot pull. 4 men pulling on a python is 4 men helping it. Chong Si-wan was the only one doing anything useful, and what he was doing was mad. He was putting rounds into the dirt beside its head, one at a time, to make it look at him instead. I came off the rock above them with a machete. You do not cut a python. Dang is for things with necks. You split the head straight down, and you do it in one, because if you do it in two, you are now in the coils with your friend, and there are 2 problems where there was one. I did it in one. It let go the way a rope lets go. All at once, everywhere, and she came out of it and fell on her hands and knees in the leaf mold and was thoroughly sick. Then, while 8 policemen stood in a circle breathing, I rolled that snake over, opened it, and took the gallbladder out. What are you doing? Somebody said faintly. Medicine, I said. Dead. It is worth more than the snake. Si-wan put out a hand to help me up. I did not need it. He was already saying it as I stood. Get behind me. You are a girl. And then he stopped, because he was looking at what I was holding, and at what was on the ground behind me. And his brain was doing the same recalculation everybody's brain did in the first month. He did not stop looking at me for the rest of that day. I noticed. I filed it and I did nothing with it, because that particular file only ever causes trouble. At the station, Comrade Liu recovered enough to make a speech about how the masses should not seek personal advantage from collective effort, and how requesting compensation reflected capitalist hedonism. Comrade Liu, I said, do not just thank me with words. The room stopped. I do not want a pennant, I said. I want money. I killed the snake that was digesting you, and I did it with a farm tool, and I am an 18-year-old girl who eats 4 bowls of rice at a sitting. Somebody in this room should be embarrassed, and I have decided it is not going to be me. Comrade Liu said the word hedonism again. Also, I said, there is snake on your collar. She got behind 2 other officers so fast she knocked a chair over. They brought the money to the village 6 days later, 200 yuan and a red pennant that said helpful. People's hero. I found out later that the bureau had approved 50 and Changxian had put in the other 150 out of his own pocket without telling anyone, which is a thing about that man I did not learn until much later and did not know what to do with when I did. Jing cared nothing for the money. Li Xing held that pennant up like a newborn. Advanced collective, he kept saying. Manhwa, do you understand what this is? This is a mark on our file. Advanced collective gets fertilizer allocation. That was the day I understood what pennants are for in this decade. They are not honors. They are lines in a ledger, and the ledger buys pork. I made a great deal of noise about the 200 yuan. I counted it in the yard. I told 4 separate people the number. Because I was also, that same month, moving several hundred jin of black market pork, and the very best cover for money you cannot explain is money you can. The old woman came the next morning. Her name was Tuju and she was about 70, and she had 11 grandchildren, and she sat down on my step and told me her 3rd grandson Tuza needed a bride price of 100 yuan. I respect you, she said, patting my knee. That is why I am asking you, and not anybody else.
Auntie, I said.
That is a very wide face you have on. She started to explain that 100 yuan was nothing to me. So I got up, and I picked a stone out of the wall of my yard, the round gray one about the size of a melon, and I set it on the ground, and I put my heel through it. She looked at the 2 halves for a while. 2 men arrived, took her by the elbow, and removed her from my property while explaining at volume exactly what the brigade thought of people who came begging at the door of a girl who had just given 900 jin of pork to the collective. Word went round. Nobody asked me for a loan again for a year. That autumn I made a decision about the 10 mu that turned out to be the smartest thing I did in either life. I did not plant vegetables. Vegetables are everywhere. Nobody in Liao province is going to pay real money for a cabbage. I planted fruit. Thedious fruit. Apple, peach, plum, grape, orange. Watermelon seed. I told Josie I wanted saplings, and he asked no questions and produced them in 11 days. Because Josie had discovered that the answer to any request from me was worth more than the request. I also put a ginseng root into the black soil, because I wanted to know what that soil actually did, and how fast. Then Xiaoyu fell in the river. She could not swim. Li Bing could, and pulled her out, and that should have been the whole story. His mother arrived before Xiaoyu's hair was dry. He touched her body, she announced to the assembled riverbank, in front of everyone. Who will take her now? He has to marry her. It is only right. Xiaoyu was standing there soaked and shaking and turning white. I slapped that woman across the face. Doodle remnant thinking, I said, loudly, in the direction of the largest group. Deciding a woman's marriage on the basis that a man laid hands on her. Comrade, I can be at the commune before dinner. Shall we see what the caterers think of your ideology? If your clicks, she backed off. Jiyu got home. But backing off is not enough, because backing off means she goes home and tells it differently, and tries again in a month. So I went back down to the river. Li Bing's mother and sister were on the bank doing laundry. I picked them both up and threw them in. Then I got Li Xiaobao, who was standing there with his mouth open, being the son of a dog, and I put my foot in his back and sent him in after them to pull them out. I waited until he had them both on the mud. Comrades, I called out to the 11 people now watching. He touched their bodies. In front of everyone. So Hong has to marry Li Xiaobao. It is only right I would pay money to see it again. Lei Bing's mother arrived at the same time from the other direction. Those two women went at each other over that riverbank for 40 minutes. And the marriage of Xiaoyu was never mentioned by anybody in Yutu village again. That night Xiaoyu sat on the edge of the king and said something in a very small voice. Manhua, I did not fall, I turned around. Somebody pushed me, I felt a hand, I did not see her face. She was wearing blue, I got the whole village into my head and started sorting. Blue jacket. Alone on that path at that hour. Reason to hate a girl who has done nothing to anybody. 3 candidates. Then 2. Then 1, because only one of them had a reason, and the reason was Dang Jin, whose hands I had personally seen in the scrub with Liu Hong, jealous over a man who was cheating on her with the girl she tried to drown. Beautiful. I did not go to the brigade leader. There was no proof and there never would be. I went at 2 in the morning with something that burns very slowly and puts a household to sleep, and I carried Liu Hong out of her own bed, across the village, to the house of Zhou. General Zhou Zhen was a bachelor of 40. There was a story about his wife that everybody in Yuto knew and nobody said out loud. But something in a cup for both of them. And I took her clothes away with me. In the morning the entire village was standing in that yard, and Zhou Zhen was standing in the doorway saying, which meant, in the arithmetic of 1972, that she had not been a maiden when she arrived. That family was finished, not dead, not arrested, finished, in the way that matters in a village of 800 where the only currency anybody actually spends is what the neighbors think. And across the compound, Deng Jun went the color of old rice. Because he understood before anybody else did, that if she talked, he was next. Her family lasted 11 days. Then both daughters-in-law went to the parents and put it plainly, marry her out or divide the household because we are not living under this roof while the village counts our chickens. They took the first offer the matchmaker brought, which was a man in the next commune with a temper. And they took it fast. And the mother cried for a week and told everybody it was the girl's own fault. I did not enjoy that as much as I expected to. I did enjoy the wedding. Village weddings that year had no rings and no banquet hall. What they had was a portrait on the wall, a brigade leader with a little red book, and both parties reciting a promise to serve the people before they said anything to each other. You cook the banquet. 8 dishes is the standard. She did 10. That village had never in living memory eaten 10 dishes at one sitting. And by the 4th course, there were men standing behind the seated guests just to watch her carry things out of the kitchen. Whoever marries that girl, said Xu Fengxia, to the entire courtyard, will be full until he dies. My wedding gift was 2 red pillowcases, because red cloth in 1972 was harder to get than pork, and everybody in that yard knew exactly what they were worth. 3 days later, a train came into the county with my sister on it. Wang Mei got off it in a dress and leather shoes with a boy named Wei Feng carrying both her bags, because Wei Feng had heard her mention paging twice and had done the arithmetic. She told the reception cadre she had answered the call of the motherland. There was a girl on that train who refused to give up her seat to her and who said out loud, in front of the carriage, that a person who volunteers so loudly usually wants something. Her name was Gao Lin, and she was also going to Qingxi County, and she was going there because she had run away from being introduced to husbands. I did not know any of that yet. What I knew 3 days later was that there were foreign voices on my mountain again. I heard them from about 40 meters. In my first life I had spent 4 years in the Northwest, with nothing to do at night. And I had learned 3 languages out of textbooks, and one of them was theirs. They were looking for something. A cache, from the way they were quartering the slope. I came up behind the first one and put my hand on the side of his neck. And by the time the second one had turned around, he had about a quarter of a second left to be surprised in. I tied them, put them in 2 sacks, and roped both sacks to the back of a bicycle I had built out of garbage. Comrade Liu was on duty when I wheeled them in. She looked at the sacks. She looked at me. And that woman, God love her, opened her mouth and said that it was highly suspicious for one educated youth to keep encountering foreign agents, and that perhaps a proper investigation into my own background was overdue. I slapped her, in the County Public Security Bureau, in front of the duty desk, with 2 live prisoners on the floor between us. Nobody stopped me. That is the part I want on the record. 4 officers watched it happen, and every single one of them found something fascinating to look at. Zhang Siwan came to the village himself to ask me for a favor. They had documents off the spies and nobody in the county could read them. Nobody in the province apparently could read them quickly. You speak it, he said. You proved that on the mountain. It would be an enormous help to the work. No, I said. He had clearly not budgeted for that. Comrade Su, I am not prepared to be free labor. I said, I am an educated youth on work points. If the Bureau wants a translator, the Bureau can hire one. And if the Bureau's translator is me, the Bureau can pay me. There is a particular silence that comes off a man in 1972 when a girl says the word pay to him about her own brain. He came back 2 days later with a rate. I did 40 pages in one night by lamp. It took me until 4 in the morning and I was extremely happy the entire time. Because when it was done, Chang Xiwan put 50 won on my table. A factory worker in this decade made 30 a month. That is what one night of knowing something was worth. And I made absolutely certain that the sum was said out loud in front of 6 people at the grain window the following morning. Legal money. On the surface. Where everybody can see it. It is the best coat there is. While I was earning it, Lu Hong finally broke. She stood up in the middle of the compound and pointed at Deng Jun and demanded that he marry her. He denied all of it. Loudly. Then he made the mistake of saying the word proofs. I raised my hand. I saw you, I said, on the hill path, in the scrub, in the 3rd week of September at dusk. Then Gao Yun, who had come back from the county hospital 2 days earlier with his arm out of the sling, said, so did we. Wu Han nodded. It is very hard to argue with 3 witnesses when one of them shot a spy for the state. They married him to her inside a month. 2 people who had each tried to destroy somebody I cared about, sealed together in one house for the rest of their lives, with a village watching. I have been told I can be cruel. I would like to point out that in that particular case I did not lift a finger, I just spoke up at the right moment. The trap was theirs. Gao Yun and Wu Han came to dinner to say thank you and brought canned meat, malt extract, sugar and white rabbit candy, which in 1972 is not a gift, it is a declaration. Wu Han rubbed his jaw over the rice. I keep getting headaches, he said, since the mountain doctor says it is from the blood loss. Terrible, I said. I have never told him. I am not going to. The next batch of educated youth arrived in the last week of October. 4 of them, Zhang Di, Wei Feng, Kai Ying, and Gao Lin. I want to be precise about the name, because I did not know it yet and it mattered enormously. The girl who got off that ox cart wearing a dress and leather shoes was registered as Zhang Ji, because the Shen family had not gotten around to unmaking her name. And so the fake daughter came into my village still wearing my surname. She looked at the ox cart and said it was dirty. Then walk, said Li Xing, and drove off. She got in. At the grain window she looked at the coarse ration and said, to a room full of people who had eaten it every day of their lives. This is what you feed animals. Then buy fine grain with your own money, said the cadre, and went back to his ledger. She lasted 4 days at the educated youth compound. I want to lay out those 4 days, because they are the whole of that girl in miniature. Day 1 she refused the common pot and ate biscuits with milk powder while 16 people watched. Day 2 she asked which of the women would be doing her washing, and was told, by Li Chenling, in a completely level voice, that the river was that way. Day 3 she discovered the toilet arrangements. Day 4 she came to my gate to rent a room. I opened the door. She stood there in her city shoes with her hair done. And she started explaining that the compound was unsanitary and that she was willing to pay, and that as fellow educated youth we ought to help one another. Behind her, at the bottom of my path, the mountain was going purple and somewhere up it there was a bear I had killed with my hand. I like quiet, I said, and shut the door in her face. Here is the part I did not understand for another 8 months. She stood outside that door with her heart going, and the thing she felt was not the ordinary insult. She had looked at my face and something in it had turned her stomach over, and she had no idea why, and the not knowing made it worse. She worked it out about a week later, lying on the kang, and it nearly took the top of her head off. I looked like Deng Fen. The woman who had raised her, Do. The woman who had held her when she was small and who had, 4 weeks earlier, packed her clothes. The girl who had taken my mother's arms for 18 years came to a village 900 kilometers from Beijing and found my mother's face waiting for her at a gate, and she decided, right there, that she was going to ruin me. She asked for land to build a house. Zhang told her that the harvest mattered more than her personal comfort, and that if she found the arrangements unsatisfactory the brigade could return her to the educated youth office. She asked to be made brigade accountant, on the grounds that she had finished school. I have never heard a work team laugh like that. The accountant's whole family got up. Zhou Wei said nothing at all, which anybody who had been paying attention would have recognized as a bad sign, and the next morning Jiang Ji received the hoe with the split handle. She refused the common pot and ate biscuits with milk powder in front of everyone. Cao Xiangqin, chewing corn cake, said, then do not eat. Nobody is holding you. She asked to borrow my bicycle and offered a yuan. No? She rode to the county on the ox cart, with a handkerchief spread under her, and the aunties kept up a commentary the entire 14 kilometers. Among the newcomers there was one I liked immediately, and she made it very easy by being furious. Gao Lin looked like her brother, and moved like a fight looking for a place to happen. She had run away from a matchmaking table, registered for the countryside on her own signature, and picked the county her brother was in. Gao Yun wanted her sent home. She informed him that if he did that, she would register somewhere he could not find her. Let the harvest cure her, I said. You do not know her. I know that you are going to lose. He lost. And then Gao Lin found out about the interesting thing her brother had said in a field. Chenling told her, kindly, over the washing, thinking she was doing a good deed. She explained that the aunties had stopped bothering Comrade Lu because the poor man had told everyone he could not father children. Gail Lynn stood there with a wet shirt in her hands and did not move for a full minute. She came to me instead. She had heard about the 3 boar. She had heard about the 12 spies. She got down in my yard and called me master. Forehead to the dirt, the whole traditional apparatus, and I had to pick her up by the collar to make her stop. Get up, nobody says master. Then Sister Anne. Then Sister Hua. She had tried for a women's special unit in Beijing and failed the selection. And she had decided somewhere on that ox cart that I was the second door. We trained every evening after work. She was not gifted. She was something better, which is that she did not stop. The spies talked, in a room I never saw. They had been living in the next brigade over as ordinary sent-down people for 2 years. The transmitter was under the floor of a house, and the brigade leader who had been taking their gifts went away in a car and did not come back. That is when the work changed shape. It stopped being about finding outsiders, started being about finding our own. Cheng Siyuan brought the second pennant himself and another 200 yuan. Zhang Ji got to him first, in the middle of the yard, with a smile I recognized from a Beijing hallway. Brother Siyuan, I did not expect to see you here. I volunteered, you know, to temper myself. G. He was perfectly courteous for exactly 11 seconds and then he walked past her to me. Su Fengxia, who missed nothing, told Zhang Ji to get back to the field in front of him. I made a small performance out of handing over the finished translation in the open yard, and Zhang Siyuan counted the fee into my hand where 4 separate aunties could see the notes. Money with a reason attached. Always a reason. 2 days later Zhang Ji came to me, holding out a 50 fen note. Sell me a pheasant. I looked at the money and then at her. You are asking me to sell agricultural products privately for cash, I said. Comrade, that is speculation. Are you trying to entrap me? No. Because I will report this conversation. She got out of my yard so fast she lost a shoe. That week, an old woman came to my gate after dark and got down on her knees before I could stop her. She was from a family that had been landlords 3 regimes ago, which in Yudo village meant that no one had spoken to her in public since 1958. Her granddaughter had given birth and had no milk. The great-grandson was 6 days old and had stopped crying, which is the part that frightens you. She held up a gold bar, duhua, actual bar. Small, the kind that gets sewn into a hem in a bad year. I took it. I want to be honest about that, because I could tell the story with me refusing, and it would sound better. Then I gave her a pheasant, an entire nest of eggs, 2 tins of milk powder, a paper of sugar, a jar of malt extract. Auntie, I said at the gate. That bar is worth a great deal more than what I have put in your basket. I am telling you so you know I am not a good person. I am telling you because I want you to come back next time instead of dying quietly. And you will only come back if you understand that I am getting something out of it. She cried, on my hands. The baby lived 2 years later. That granddaughter's family did something for me that I could not have bought with any amount of money. And when it happened, I was not surprised at all. There is one more thing from that autumn, and it is the strangest thing in this entire account, and I am putting it down exactly as I heard it, because I do not have an explanation. Jiao Lin told me why her family had been pushing her at matchmakers since she turned 17. When she was small, she nearly died. A man on the road healed her. Before he left, he told her family one thing. She has to be married before she is 20. If she is not married before her 20th birthday, she will not survive it. Do you believe it? I asked her. No, she said. That is why I ran winter, came at Yutu village, the way it comes in the northeast, which is all at once, and personally, Jing Siyuan brought me a job with it. The city machinery factory had bought a production line from abroad the year before. Nobody could get it to run properly. The foreign company had finally sent an engineer, and the factory had discovered that between 1,100 employees they had not one person who could talk to him. 300 yuan for the assignment. 300. For talking. I got a long leave from Li Sheng and a letter of introduction, and then I did the one thing that actually took thought, which was Jiayu. I was not leaving that girl alone in a house at the foot of a mountain in a village that contained Chenfeng. They Olin, I said. Move in with us. She lit up like a stove door opening. 3 yuan a month, I added. She stopped. You are charging me rent. I am charging you rent, I said. Because this brigade has 800 people in it, and every one of them is watching to see whether I am soft. If I give one person a free house, by spring I will be running a hostel. 3 yuan. She paid it every month for 2 years and told the story to everybody, which was the entire point. Feng made his contribution to the winter about a week before I left. He had attached himself to Zhangji in the manner of a barnacle. And when I told her to get her elbow out of my basket at the grain window, he stepped in with a speech about how educated youth ought to look after one another. I slapped him. He came at me, which is a decision, because he was a head taller and had clearly done the arithmetic where a man is twice a girl. I put him over my shoulder and into the frozen ground, and he lay there making a noise like a kettle. They both went to Li Sheng. Chang gave them a lecture about disrupting production and gave me nothing at all. And I got on the early bus to the city. I got the aisle seat because I got there first. 20 minutes out of the county, I noticed the man. Wire glasses, 40, a briefcase on his knees. and his other hand was inside the coat of the girl next to him. She was about 16. She was sitting absolutely rigid, staring at the seat in front of her, and she was not screaming, and it took me 2 seconds to see why. He had a knife against her side, low, under the coat, where nobody could see it and she could feel every bit of it. I looked around that bus, because I wanted to know whether I was the only one. I was not the only one. The man across the aisle had seen it. The woman behind them had seen it. There were 11 adults within 2 meters of that girl, and every single one of them was looking very hard at the back of the seat in front of them. I do not blame them. Particularly. There is a knife. There is a stranger. There are your own children at home. But I have been the girl who nobody stood up for, in a room where people knew, and I have thought a great deal since about the specific temperature of that. I stood up. Comrade, I said brightly, would you swap? I get sick by the window. Her eyes came up at me like a drowning person's. She could not object. That is the beauty of a knife under a coat. The whole apparatus only works if nobody says anything out loud. And the moment a cheerful girl asks a normal question in a normal voice, he has to be a normal man on a normal bus, or he has to show the room what he is. We swapped. I sat down. His hand came back, out of pure habit, and touched my leg. Hooligan, I said, at the top of my lungs, in a bus. He went for the knife, and I already had his wrist. It broke going one way. The knife went out the window, going the other. By the time the driver had the bus stopped, I had him face down in the aisle with my bicycle rope around him and my knee between his shoulders. Then the 11 adults woke up. Everybody had a great deal to say once he was tied. Everybody had seen it all along. 2 men helped hold him who had been fascinated by the seat in front of them 90 seconds earlier, and I let them, because I am not interested in shaming people who are only ordinary. Girl did not say anything at all for the whole ride to the city. She just sat with her hands in her lap, shaking, and every few minutes she looked over at me to check that I was still there. They drove the whole bus to the City Public Security Bureau. I gave my statement. Then I asked whether there would be a pennant. The officer said there would certainly be a pennant. The pennant is secondary, I said. Write up the bonus as well. The girl turned out to be Lin Ugxiao, and Lin Ugxiao turned out to be an announcer at the district radio station, and she bought me lunch and wrote down where to find her. If you ever need anything, said out loud, she said. Come to me. I put that in my pocket and did not use it for a year, and when I did use it, it mattered. 4 men followed me out of that lunch. They took me into an alley behind the bathhouse, and I let them, because the fastest way to find out what is happening in a city is to let it happen to you for 11 seconds. They were not thieves. They said the words out loud while they were still walking. They had a buyer. The buyer wanted 3, and I would make 3. I put all 4 of them down in the time it takes to describe it, and then I sat on a crate and made them talk. The one doing the crying was called Xiaogang. He was 22 and he had borrowed money from a man called Brother Sun to treat his grandfather's lungs, and the interest had eaten him alive, and Brother Sun had explained that the debt could be settled with 3 women. How many? I said. Has he settled that way? Xiaogang could not look at me. I let them all go. Every one of them. I took Brother Sun's address instead, because a man who has been buying and selling human beings in a city this size for years has money, and I have needs. I went to the guest house where a foreign engineer had been playing a radio at full volume since 10 at night, and the staff were standing outside his door in a helpless little cluster, because none of them could say stop in any language he owned. I knocked. He opened it in his undershirt. Gale. I told him, in his own language, that it was late and that people had work in the morning. He was delighted, not by the request. By the fact that a Chinese girl in a village jacket had opened her mouth and his own words had come out. Your accent is very good, he said, leaning on the frame. Perhaps you would like to come in and be less polite to me in the bedroom. I have thought about this a lot since. I did not lose my temper. I want that understood. What I felt was the opposite of temper. It was the cold, tidy click of a decision being made. All right, I said, and walked into his room and closed the door. Then I taped his mouth shut and I beat that man from one end of that bed to the other. He went to the police in the morning with 2 black eyes. I was in the corridor when they came, and I said, with wide honest eyes, that I was an 18-year-old rural-educated youth who weighed 45 kilos, and that if I had assaulted a foreign guest twice my size for 20 minutes, someone in this building would surely have heard him. Nobody had heard a thing. It is remarkable what a whole floor can fail to hear. The police apologized to him for the misunderstanding and left. Then I went back in and beat him again for reporting me. He was 2 meters tall and he cried into the pillow and he said in his own language, wetly, that he was never going to marry a Chinese woman as long as he lived. That left me with a free night and an address. Brother Sun had a compound on the north edge of the city with a wall around it and 2 men at the gate who were very awake. I did not go over the wall. I went up onto the roof of the house next door and lay flat on the tiles for 2 hours listening. Because information is worth more than a strongbox and I had a suspicion I wanted confirmed. I got it confirmed at about 1 in the morning. In 2 months that operation had moved a number of women that I am not going to write down, and the reason it could move that many is that it was not a gang. It was a shipping route. There were letters in that house. letters going out to the our country, and lists coming back, and a separate ledger for antiques leaving the coast in fishing boats. They were selling women out of the country and buying the paperwork with our own history. I want to be clear that up to that moment I had come there for money. I put the whole compound to sleep first, gate men included. Then I went in and dealt with every man in it, and I'm not going to describe how, because there are things I did in that courtyard that I have not told Gao Yun to this day. Then I emptied it. Crates of antiques, gold, scrolls and oilcloth, boarded goods with the customs marks filed off, and in a wall cavity behind the Kang in the back room, cash. 80,000 yuan. I sat down on the floor of a dead man's bedroom with 80,000 yuan in front of me and I did the only arithmetic that mattered. A factory worker made 30 a month, 360 a year. It would take that worker 220 years. The pendant was warm against my collarbone. It always is, right before I take something. I put every note of it into the space, and the crates, and the gold, and then I went back for the letters and put those in a place where they would be found by the right people at the wrong time for everybody involved. The city talked about nothing else for a week. The police turned that quarter over twice. Xiaogang worked it out on about the third day. I watched him work it out, across a table, with his tea halfway to his mouth. He put the tea down. He did not say one word about it then, and he has not said one word about it since. He did not fix the machines. He turned up at the factory the next morning and explained through me, since I was the only channel available, that his terms had changed. 10,000 American dollars. And a night with the interpreter. I hit him in front of the director of the factory. Director. Fan nearly came out of his skin. He got me into the corridor and he begged. Not ordered. Begged. A man of 55 with his hands out, because the plan for the quarter was resting on those machines and he had 1,100 people to answer for. Comrade Su. Please. Apologize to him. I know what he said. Please. No, I said. I will fix them. There is a silence a man makes when he has decided you are ill. You cannot, said Director Fan. Comrade Su. That is imported equipment. There are 1,100 people in this factory and 4 of them are engineers and none of the 4 can. Give me the workshop from 7, I said. Jabberdow. And keep everybody out of it. He gave me the workshop because he had nothing left to lose except his quarter. I went in at 7 in the morning and I locked the door. Then I put my hands flat on the first machine. I want to explain what that is like, since I have never been able to tell anybody. It is not knowledge. I do not suddenly know German engineering. It is closer to running your hand down a wall in the dark and feeling where the crack is. The current goes out of me and through the thing and comes back with a shape, and in the shape there is a place where the shape is wrong. On that first machine, the wrong place was a bearing seat, 40 millimeters out of true. Somebody had shimmed it at the factory and the shim had walked. The second one had a timing chain fitted 1 tooth over. The third had been assembled correctly and installed on an uneven floor, which is not a machine fault, which is why 4 engineers had spent a year proving there was nothing wrong with it. I did the whole line by lunch. They ran it in front of me. Director Fan stood there with his hat in his hands. He did not look at the machines. He looked at me. Then he turned around, put his back squarely to the foreign engineer, and announced that he would be writing to the head office about the conduct of their representative during a state contract. David begged. In 2 languages. It was educational. The factory paid me the 300 for the assignment and 1,000 yuan bonus on top of it, and Director Fan offered me a permanent post at 120 a month. Down. I am registered rural, I said. If I take a city post, I have to explain how, and I would rather not be interesting. Give me something else. So he made me an off-staff technical consultant at 100 yuan a month, and he gave me a work certificate with a red stamp on it. That certificate was worth more than the 1,000. That certificate meant that from that day forward, Li Hua had a job, and a job means income, and income explains everything. On my way out of the city, I went and found Xiaogang. His grandfather was coughing in a room with no coal in it. I put 20 yuan in the old man's quilt and told Xiaogang that I wanted to know who stood above brother's son, and to take his time and not be brave about it. Then I went to the dump and came back with 4 broken radios. I fixed all 4 in one evening behind a closed door. I kept 1. 80 yuan each, I told Xiaogang. Sell them for what you can get. Anything over 80 is yours. He held those 3 radios like they were children. That is the day I stopped being a girl with a black market contact and started being a girl with a channel, and I want to note the price of it. 20 yuan for a stranger's grandfather. Everything that came after came out of that. I got back to U2 on a Thursday with 100 yuan a month, a red stamp certificate, 3,000 yuan in bonuses and cash, and brother's son's address folded very small in my inside pocket. Jieyu had kept the stove going the whole time. Gao Lin had a bruise on her forearm she was extremely proud of. I took them both up the mountain the next morning and started teaching Gao Lin the bow. Why the bow, she complained. Teach me what you do then. Because I am going to be away, I said, and often, and it is better to teach a person to fish. Dead it. She was still arguing about it when I put the first arrow through a pheasant, at 40 meters to shut her up. I counted it that night. All of it. I want to describe this properly because it is my favorite thing that I do and I am not going to apologize for it. I waited until Sayu and Gao Lin were asleep. Then I went in, and I sat down on the floor of a pavilion in the middle of 10 mu of black soil, and I brought out every single note I owned and put it in front of me. 80,000 from a compound on the north edge of the city. 3,200 from a strongbox in a courtyard behind a locked gate. 2,000 for a bear, DE. 540 for pork. 1,000 from a factory. 300 for talking. 50 for one night with a lamp and a stack of foreign paper. 200 for a snake, 200 for 12 men on a mountain, 20 from a city that is apparently on a budget. 1,800 out of a brick in a wall in Beijing. 800 for a job placement I sold to a girl who thought she was cheating me. I stacked it in hundreds. I squared the edges. I counted the stacks twice and then a third time because the third time is the good one. Then I picked up a stack and held it against my face. New notes smell like a printing works, and old notes smell like everybody who has ever owned them. And if you think that is a disgusting thing to enjoy, then you have never been 11 years old and been sent to buy salt with exactly the right coins counted into your hand and been beaten because the price had gone up 2 fen. Hello, I said, out loud, to a stack of money, in an impossible pavilion, at 2 in the morning. A worker in this country makes 30 yuan a month, 360 a year. I sat there and did the division and got a number that took me 240 years to earn honestly, and I put my head back and laughed until I had to stop because I was worried the sound might carry, which it cannot, which I know, which did not help him. Then I put it all away and went out and lay down on my kang in a mud brick house with a burnt wall, next to a girl who owns 2 jackets. I did not tell her. I did not tell anybody. For years. That is the actual price of the thing on my neck, not the blood, although there is blood, and I have opened my own finger so many times now that the pad of my left thumb has gone shiny. It is that I can never once say any of it out loud. I gave the whole village the next 2 boar. Every jin of them. I took nothing, not even fat, and when Li Shang tried to argue I told him I had money and did not need meat and he should stop insulting me in front of people. That was not generosity. I had 80,000 yuan of a dead trafficker's money sitting in a pavilion and I was frightened. In a small quiet way I did not examine, and giving 600 jin of pork to 800 peasants felt like putting something back on the scale. I killed the first one in front of Gao Lin, which I had not planned. She and Zio went up the tree, which is now simply what happens when I say the word tree, and I took the boar's head off with the machete on the way past. Gao Lin came down out of that tree very slowly. Sister Hua, she said, D. How long until I can do that in? Never. How long D? 4 years and you will be able to hurt a man, I said. The boar is not on the list. The rain came in August and it came for 3 days. I want to talk about the ditch, because the ditch is the only thing in this entire account that I did purely because I am tedious. When they built my house, I paid 4 extra men for 1 extra day and had them cut a channel round the uphill side of the yard and out through the lower wall. It cost 11 yuan. The whole brigade thought I was mad. Water runs downhill, they said, and your house is at the bottom of a hill, and you have built a ditch to lead water past a house that water is going to go past anyway. Ding asked me about it twice. I am at the foot of a mountain, I said. When a mountain gets wet, everything on it comes down here on. On the second night of that rain, the educated youth compound flooded. It went in under the door at about 11 and it was ankle deep by midnight, and 17 people spent the rest of the night on the king with their belongings in their laps and their quilts held up out of the water like a room full of very tired birds. The grain store took water. That was the serious part. 11 sacks went bad. Nothing came into my yard at all. The channel filled and ran and went out through the wall and down the lane, and I stood in my doorway at 2 in the morning in the dark and watched 11 yuan work. Dan. I went and got the 2 rice sacks off my own floor, and I put my boots on, and I spent the rest of that night in the water with everybody else, moving grain up onto the platform by lamplight. I want to be accurate about why. It was not kindness. It was because a girl with a dry house at the foot of a wet hill is a girl the whole brigade is going to look at strangely for a week, and a girl who was in the water with them until dawn is a girl who was clever about a ditch. Jing came and looked at my channel in the morning with the rain still coming down, and stood there for a long time with his hands behind his back. By September there were 9 of them along that lane. Autumn harvest started 9 days later and the commune announced the prize. Whichever brigade finished its harvest first would get electricity. I want you to understand what that word did to a room full of people who had gone to bed at dark every night of their lives. Li Shang read the notice out twice and his voice went sideways in the middle of the second one. Work teams got assigned. I got Yu, who fed all 4 of us out of 1 pot and made it taste like a wedding. I got Jiao Lin, who by then could outcut 2 men. And I got Wu Han, who volunteered so fast he pulled something. Gei Yun got Jiang Jia, Wei Feng, and Tao Xiangchen. Jiang Ji's contribution to the autumn harvest was a slogan. Educated youth should help one another, she explained, from a shaded spot, while Wei Feng did her rows badly and Tao Xiangchen did her own rows at exactly the speed they were being done for her. Jim worked at the pace of his slowest team member on purpose, without ever saying why. And that team crawled home in the dark every single night for 9 days while everybody watched. We were going to lose. Not because of them. Because harvest speed is a hard ceiling. There's only so fast a human arm goes, and the neighboring brigade had 200 more hands than us. So I sat on my king at midnight and thought about the ceiling. And the ceiling was the arm. Fine. Remove the arm. I had seen a reaper in my old life. I had seen 100 of them. I knew exactly what one is, which is a cutter bar, a reel, a chain, and something to turn all of it. I could build the cutter bar out of scrap. I could build the reel out of scrap. What I could not build out of scrap was an engine. Cheng Si-yuan came to the village 2 days later with the third pennant and 20 yuan. 20. The county gave 200, I said, looking at it. The city gives 20. Comrade Cheng, does the honor go up as the money goes down? Because at this rate the province will give me a handshake. He laughed until he had to sit on the wall. Zhang Jie watched that from the field, and I could feel it on the back of my neck like a hot iron, because he had come to Yutu village 4 times now and 4 times he had walked past her. Dare. Abe was a boy at the grain window that week who demanded a piece of my meat. His mother backed him up. Well, she said, it is only a little. You have so much. Would it kill you? Auntie, I said, the bank also has a great deal of money. Go and ask the bank. And then I ate a piece in front of him, unhurried, and said the only useful thing anybody had ever said to me at that age. If you want meat, become capable. Nobody is going to hand it to you and you should stop expecting it, because expecting it is what makes people poor. His mother called me heartless for a month. That boy went into the mountains with a snare the following spring and came back with a hare and looked around for me on the path to make sure I saw it. Director Fan got me the engines. 2 of them. Written off, condemned, going for scrap, and the moment I saw 2 instead of 1 I stopped thinking about a reaper and started thinking about 2 reapers. While I was in his workshop I also fixed his lathe, which had been throwing out parts a ½ millimeter wide for a year and a half. 20 minutes, his reject rate went from 1 in 9 to 1 in 40, and Director Fan followed me around the rest of the afternoon like a man who has found money in a coat. Xiao Gang had 240 yuan waiting for me for the 3 radios and the 20 back that I had put in his grandfather's quilt. He is walking, he said. Sister Hua, he is walking to the gate and back twice a day. Good, what about brother son's people? Nothing yet. He hesitated. The bureau is going through that whole quarter with a comb. Everybody has gone quiet. If you were thinking of doing anything, do not do it now. I looked at that young man across the table, at his terrible haircut, and his careful eyes, and I understood that he had just given me the most valuable thing he owned, which was a warning he was not obliged to give. I built the reaper in my own yard over 5 days. Zhang Ji asked for a day off in the middle of it and got refused. So she set it at the workpoint desk, in front of 9 people. That she did not see why Li Hua could have a whole week off. That everybody knew what was going on between Li Hua and the brigade leader. Zhao Lin hit her twice before I had finished turning around. Then Li Sheng came out of the office and told the entire yard exactly what the leave was for. That the brigade had authorized it. That Li Hua was building a machine. A machine, said Zhang Ji. She had a laugh in her voice and she should have known better, because that yard had watched me carry 2 boar. We ran it on the 11th day. It was, I will admit, the ugliest object ever assembled by human hands. It had mismatched wheels, a reel made of bicycle spokes and slats, a cutter bar off a hay knife, and 1 engine bolted on with a bracket I had shaped by hand. Zhang Ji stood in front of the whole brigade and said, "That thing will not cut grass in bed." I said, "What'll if it works? You apologize." In front of everybody out loud. She took it, because she had already decided what she was looking at. 1 mew of wheat takes 2 grown men 1 full day. The machine did it in 10 minutes. Dear. Nobody cheered at first. That is the part I remember. 800 people stood at the edge of that field in total silence and watched the wheat go down in a line. And then an old man near the front started laughing, and could not stop, and then the whole field went up like a struck match. Li Sheng sat down in the stubble. Zhang Ji refused to apologize and ran. It took Li Sheng 3 days and a written self-criticism to get it out of her, and when she finally said the words, she said them to my left ear, with her jaw locked, and I did not care at all, because I had already built the second machine. That one took half a day. I understood the shape of it by then. 2 reapers. Yutu brigade finished the autumn harvest 11 days ahead of every other brigade in Longgang commune. Li Sheng asked me what I wanted. There was a great deal I could have asked for. I had thought about it while I was fitting the second cutter bar. Take Siu, Gao Lin, Gao Yun, and Wu Han off field duty for the rest of the season, I said. Full points, other work. They have all carried something for me this year. He stared at me. That is it. Nothing for yourself. I have 100 yuan a month and a bicycle, I said. What am I going to do? Ask you for a chicken. Here's what I did not know while I was saying that. Zhang Ji had spent the afternoon in the county looking for Cheng Si-yuan, and not finding him. On the way back through the alley behind the tannery, she had found 4 men instead, and she had put 200 yuan into their hands as a deposit against 500. The job was simple. Go to the house at the foot of the mountain. Wait until it is dark. Pour the kerosene around the outside first. They were not asked to be careful about who was inside. I woke up because the air was wrong. Not smoke. Before smoke, there is a sweetness that comes into a room ahead of a fire, and there was something else under it, something that had been coming in under the door for a while, and my arms would not do what I asked them to do. Gas. They had put something in first. I got about halfway up and my knees went. Yeyu was 2 feet away and not moving at all. Somewhere past the wall Gaolin was making a small sound like a child, and I could not stand up. Jing. I want to describe this properly, because it is the only time in 2 lives that I have been genuinely close to finishing, and I have thought about it since, more than I let on. Everything I had was on the other side of a piece of jade that opens with blood. My hand would not close. I could not get to the string. I lay on that king with the ceiling going orange and I understood, with total clarity, that a girl who could kill a bear with one hand was about to burn to death because of a doorway she could not reach. I got the pendant in my teeth. I do not know how. I have tried to reconstruct it and I cannot. I got it up and I bit down and I bit through my own lip and blood went onto the stone. The spring was 6 steps away and I crawled all 6. One mouthful. That water has pulled me back from the edge before, and I have described it as a coat coming off, and I want to correct that. When you need it, it does not feel like a coat, it feels like being grabbed by the back of the collar. I came out of the space onto my own floor with my lungs working and my hands mine again, and the roof beam over the kitchen was alight. I got Jiayo over my shoulder and out the gate. When I came back for the door of the other room it was already open, because Gao Yun was coming out of it with his sister in his arms. I did not ask how he got there. I found out afterward. He and Wu Han had been coming down off the mountain in the dark with a radio set they had dug out of a hillside. She saw the light from 2 kilometers up. They came down that slope at a speed I do not want to think about, and they went through 4 men with kerosene tins on the way in. All 4. Not one of them left the yard, then it was just the 2 of us and the fire. There was no well. That is the thing I had never fixed and it nearly cost me everything I had. The nearest water was the brigade. Well 90 meters off, and Gay Yen stood at that well the entire night and worked the handle, and I ran that 90 meters with 2 full buckets, over and over, until my shoulders stopped reporting in, and every single time I came back the buckets were full and waiting and he never once stopped to look up. We saved the house. The kitchen roof was gone and the whole east fence burned to the ground and there was a black tongue up the wall that never came off in the 2 years I lived there. Jingji arrived with the crowd at about 4 in the morning. I was sitting on the ground with my arms shaking too badly to hold a cup. And I looked up and saw her face in the firelight before she had it arranged. She was not horrified. She was disappointed. It lasted less than a second. She got the mask on and started making the right noises. Junling was standing beside her and Li Chunling had seen it too, and Li Chunling remembered it, and 11 weeks later that memory did a great deal of work. Gao Yun had a gash the length of my hand up his forearm from the fence. I sat him down under the kerosene lamp at 4:30 in the morning and cleaned it out and closed it. He did not make a sound the whole time. He watched my hands. Afterward he said, in the odd flat voice of a man who has been awake for 22 hours, people do not notice you are pretty. I stopped with the bandage half tied. Because of the strength, he said, they see that first. They never get to the rest of it. Then he seemed to hear himself, and went a deep even red from the collar up, and looked at the wall. I finished the bandage. I did not say anything. I was 18 years old and I had been on fire an hour earlier and I had absolutely no idea what to do with my own face. The radio set they had dug out of the hillside was in pieces, properly in pieces. The kind of pieces where a professional looks at it, writes it up as unrecoverable, and goes home. I had it working in a day and a half. I did it alone, behind a shut door, and when I put it in Jiao Yun's hands he turned it over twice and did not ask me a single question. Which is the exact moment I decided I could work with that man for the rest of my life. Because from that day we could listen. Not to messages we could read. To the shape of the traffic, too, when it went quiet, and when it doubled, and which nights nobody said anything at all. The 4 arsonists went to the county in a rope line. Zheng Siyuan took the case personally and, on the doorstep, made his first attempt to invite me to lunch. I have things to do, I said, and he nodded and did not push. And I want to note that as a point in his favor, because most of them push, the 4 talked. They talked immediately and at length, because they were not soldiers, they were 4 men from an alley who had taken 200 yuan and set fire to a house with 3 women in it. The client was a young woman, educated youth. Came alone, paid cash, would not give a name. I gave them the name. They brought Jiang Ji in for an identification parade the same afternoon. And in the middle of all of that, in a wheat field, a 12-year-old girl fell over. Li Meili. Her mother had died when she was 6 and her father had brought in a new wife. And the new wife had 2 of her own, and the arithmetic of a household with not enough grain in it goes exactly the way you think. She had been working since dawn on half a bowl of thin porridge, and she went down between the rows and nobody noticed for a while because she was small. I got sugar water into her. Then I got rice balls into her, the one Sayu makes with a piece of meat hidden inside, and I watched that child find the meat with her tongue and stop chewing, and her face did something that I have to describe carefully. She did not look happy. She looked frightened. She had found something good and her first instinct was that it was a mistake and somebody was going to take it back. I know that face. Jay, I have made that face. I made it in a kitchen in Beijing over a bowl of noodles with 2 eggs in it. Her father came out to the field to collect her and I stood up. Everybody expected a lecture. Li Sheng had already given that family 2 lectures. I hunt, I said. The brigade divides what I bring down. From now on, when your family's share is counted out, somebody is going to ask me first whether that child has been eating again. Then I walked away. It worked in 4 days. 4. The brigade leader had lectured that family twice in a year and got nothing. I said one sentence about the meat ledger, and by Thursday that child was eating twice a day. I am not proud of how well I know that lever. I am extremely proud of how fast I reached for it. A lecture is words. Pork is pork. Anybody who has ever been the hungry one in a household already knows which of those 2 things moves a stepmother. And the only people who find that shocking are people who have always been fed. Li Mei started turning up at my gate after that. Not for food. She would stand at the corner of the wall until somebody noticed her, and then she would come in and sweep my yard, badly, with a broom that was taller than she was, and leave before anybody could give her anything. It took me 3 weeks to work out what she was doing. She was making it a job. Because a thing you are given can be taken back, and a thing you have earned cannot, and that is not something a 12-year-old works out on her own. So I let her sweep the yard. And I paid her in eggs. And every time she took them she looked me straight in the face, which is a thing she had not done once in the wheat field. The identification parade failed. All 4 men looked at Jiang Ji and said, one after another, that they had never seen her before in their lives. I understood it before Cheng Shi Yuan finished telling me. They were not protecting her. They were saving her. A woman they can identify is a witness. A woman they cannot identify is an income, for as long as they live and she does not. She cried in Sheng Siwen's office about the shock of being suspected, and he apologized to her. And she went home to the brigade in the front of a police vehicle. I stood in my burnt yard and made a decision, and I am going to write it down plainly. If the law will not reach her, I will. The village had already got there before me. Xu Fengxia said it out loud at the grain window, which meant everybody had been thinking it down. I brought down 3 boar that week and gave every jin of it to the brigade. And I let that family with the little girl take a share in front of everybody. And I kept 5 jin of fat and 10 of meat. Wei Feng came to Jiangji about 10 days later with an idea. And the idea was better than anything she had come up with on her own. Do not burn her. Write her letters. Forged, in her hand, arranging contact with foreign agents. Put them in her house, then report her. In 1972, that is not a fine. That is not a farm. That is a wall. He explained the whole thing to her in the lee of the compound wall, and she listened, and she promised to remember his help properly afterward in a tone that made him work very hard for 3 nights. Comrade Liu came out with the anonymous report, because of course she did. She stood in my yard with 2 officers and a piece of paper and the happiest face I have ever seen on a police officer. Comrade Su, we have received information. We will need to search the premises. Of course, I said. On 2 conditions. She does not touch anything. I pointed at Comrade Liu. And I am in the room the entire time. The officers agreed instantly, because they had been listening to Comrade Liu talk about me for 8 months and they were sick of her. I opened the drawer of the dressing table myself. The letters were in it. 3rd one down, exactly where a person would put them if they had never in their life had anything to hide. I put my hand on the drawer edge, and they went into a pavilion on 10 mu of black soil in the time it takes to blink, with 3 police officers in the room and my body between them and the drawer. That was the closest thing to actual fear I felt that entire year, and it lasted about a second and a half. Empty, said the officer. They searched for 40 minutes and found nothing, because there was nothing, and by the end of it there were 60 villagers in my yard saying extremely unkind things about the anonymous informant. Comrade Liu left without looking at anybody. Then I sat down and thought about handwriting. Because whoever wrote those letters had to write them by hand, and there are not 800 people in Yudu Brigade who can write. There are maybe 90. I went to Li Sheng and asked him to run a signature register. Everybody in the brigade, name and thumbprint, on the grounds that the accountant's books needed cleaning up. He did not ask why. He has never once asked why. It took 2 days and I sat up with a lamp and the register and 1 forged letter I had kept out of the space for exactly this purpose. Wei Feng writes his character for the number 1 with a hook on it. Nobody else in that brigade does. I did not go to the police. At about 1 in the morning I put the whole educated youth compound to sleep, and I carried 2 people out of it, 1 at a time to the foot of the mountain, and I put a sack over each head so that neither of them would ever be able to say what they had seen. I broke Zhang Ji's leg. I want to be exact, because I was exact at the time. The same leg, the left one, below the knee, the way Wang Mei's had gone. Wei Feng got 2 teeth, a broken arm and a dislocated shoulder, and I did those in an order I chose. In the morning they crawled to Li Sheng screaming my name. Do you have proof? He said. It was her. Who else in this brigade could? Do you have proof or? I felt it. She has that strength. Everybody knows she has. Comrade Shen, said Li Sheng, in the voice he used for the accountant. Yesterday somebody put forged letters in that girl's house and reported her for foreign contact. Foreign contact? Do you know what happens to a person over foreign contact? Now this morning you are on my doorstep telling me she is the criminal. Do you have proof? They had a sack and a mountain and no proof at all. They also had 800 people who had spent the previous week talking about the anonymous informant, and who had watched Comrade Liu leave my yard with an empty notebook, and who had drawn their own conclusions in the way villages do, which is instantly and permanently and out loud. Du Fengxia summarized the general view at the grain window that afternoon. 2 people go up a mountain in the dark and come back broken. Well, there is a mountain there. There are wolves on it. If you go walking on it at night, I do not know what to tell you. Jing told them to go and rest their injuries. The village enjoyed itself for about a fortnight. Somebody carved a small wolf out of a turnip and left it on the compound step, and I have never found out who. And I have my suspicions about a 12-year-old girl who had recently started eating regularly. There was a woman behind the counter at the county cooperative who had a way of looking at 3 girls in village jackets. Can you afford that? She said, when Gao Lin picked up a bolt of cloth. Gao Lin put 1,000 yuan on the counter. Da Yu, who is the gentlest person I have ever known, put down 500 without saying a word. I put down 2,000. That woman apologized for 4 solid minutes, and then went into the back and returned with the things that are kept in the back, which is the entire reason anybody performs a scene like that in a state shop in 1972. On the way out, I stopped at the dump and came back with enough parts for 2 bicycles and a television. Sitting in a heap of condemned office furniture, because somebody in an administrative building had watched it stop working and had not known that things can be fixed. Xiaogang paid 160 for the 2 radios and 700 for the television. 700 yuan. They went for 800 to 1,000 on the street and both of us knew it, and he named 700 first, without haggling, which is why he is still my man. He also had the thing I had actually been waiting 4 months for. Brother's son did not run himself, he said. Above him there was a name. Sun Chung. Director of the City Foreign Trade Combine. I put my cup down. And above Sun Chung. Somebody in the province. He looked at the table. Sister Hua. I am telling you because you asked. I am also telling you that I do not want to know what you do with it. Foreign Trade Combine. Of course, you cannot ship women and antiques out of a country without a man who signs the paperwork for things that leave the country. The old woman in the state restaurant was a smaller matter, but I enjoyed it more. I had ordered my usual, which is to say an amount of food that makes strangers put down their chopsticks, and she started up 2 tables over about waste and the masses, and how girls today have no idea. Auntie, I said, would you like a bet? I had the waitress write it down. Debt. If I could not finish everything on my table, I would pay for her meal and apologize in front of the room. If I finished it, she paid for mine. She signed it. She actually signed it. I ate all of it. Every grain. I turned the last bowl upside down. She paid with tears in her eyes and the entire restaurant applauded. And I have never enjoyed a meal more in my life. Same trip, I found the furniture. There was a courtyard full of it behind the reclamation station. Put out after a household search, and it was black wood with a grain in it like water, and I knew what it was before I got close. Golden Namu. The kind that came out of houses that used to matter. They were selling it for firewood weight. I bought the entire lot and put every stick of it into the space, and I have never told a living soul, and in about 35 years that decision is going to look like the single most intelligent thing I ever did. Deng Ping found me 2 days later in the state restaurant. He sat down at my table without being asked, in a leather jacket, with 2 men who stayed standing. I will eat with you, he said, my treat. You are ugly, I said. I would not be able to keep it down. The room went cold in a way I had not expected. The waitress came past a minute later and refilled my tea without being asked, and said, very fast and very quietly, that is Director Huang's son. She meant Sun Cheng. She meant the Foreign Trade Combine. And afterward when he had gone, 2 separate customers found reasons to walk past my table, and both of them said the same thing in different words. That one takes an interest in do not stay in this city. I had come to the county looking for a way into Sun Cheng's house. He had just sat down at my table and offered me one. They took me the next afternoon in the alley behind the bathhouse, chloroform on a cloth, from behind, and I want to say that this is a perfectly competent way to take a person and would have worked on almost anybody in that city. I let it whir. I want to be honest about the arithmetic, because it was not brave, it was arithmetic. Sun Cheng kept nothing at his house. I had been up on that roof and I had seen how careful he was. But a man who is careful at home is careless somewhere, and the somewhere is always the place he does the thing he does not want known. I could spend 3 months finding that place. Or I could let his son take me to it in the back of a truck. So I went into the sack. I went into the truck. I lay in the dark with my hands tied behind me and my face in the sacking and listened. And what I heard through the panel was Sun Ping, in the front, in a good mood, telling his men that after he was finished they could have what was left. Not this one, and the next one, and the way he said it made it clear there had been a great many. There is a lot to be said for going into a place as luggage. Nobody searches luggage. Nobody counts luggage. Nobody stands guard over the room the luggage is in. I opened my eyes in a farmhouse outside the city with 6 men in it and the door shut behind me. I did Sun Ping first, with a hand on the side of the neck, because I wanted him quiet and I wanted him last. The rest of them I did with the other thing. I have not written this down anywhere before. What came back with me from the old world is not only strength. There is a second part of it, and it is lightning, and I use it about once a year because there is no way on earth to explain it afterward. 5 men went down in a room, with no marks on them at all. Then I dragged all 6 of them into the yard and arranged them, and I stood in the doorway, and put a real one down out of a clear sky. The county talked about that for a month. Heaven's punishment, they called it, and a bolt out of nothing, in November, on the exact house where the foreign trade director's son had taken a girl. Nobody looks for a suspect in weather. I emptied that farmhouse before I left. Gold. 2 crates of antiques. A quantity of firearms that had absolutely no business being in a private house, which told me more about Sunshing than any ledger would have. And a car, which I took because it was there and because I could. His own house, when I got into it that night, was clean. Not empty. Clean. Careful. That man kept nothing at home, which is how I learned that I was dealing with somebody quite different from Brother Sun. In the morning, the whole city was talking about the lightning, and Sun Sheng was not grieving. I know he was not grieving because Xiaogang heard it from a driver. Sun Sheng spent that entire day on one subject, and the subject was not his son. It was the guns and the gold, and the fact that both were gone, and the fact that he had been putting them together for 2 years against the day he would need to leave the country. Our country. He had a place waiting. I found the children the same week, and they are the reason I still cannot tell this part properly. 2 of them came to the back door of the state restaurant asking for scraps. Boys. Maybe 9. I bought them meat buns, 4 each. They did not eat them. They said, "Thank you," very politely and put all 8 buns inside their jackets and started to leave. "Why are you not eating?" "There are others," the smaller one said. "How many others?" "Some." "How many yet?" He looked at his shoes. 22, he said. "Counting us." 22. Living against the north wall of the old grain depot, under a lean-to made of matting and 2 boards, in a city where the temperature goes to -25 in January. "What did you do last winter?" "We put the small ones in the middle." He said that the way you would say that you put the potatoes in the cellar. It was a technique. It was a solved problem. And then he added, in exactly the same voice, that it had not worked for all of them. I made him say the number. He would not. He said some, and he would not go past some. And I understood after a moment that he was not protecting himself. He was protecting me because he had worked out that I did not want the number. And at 9 years old, he had already learned to manage other people's feelings about his life. I bought out the entire steamer. Then I sat on a crate in that alley and put 500 yuan into the oldest one's hands, and grain coupons for 500 jin, and cloth, and cotton wadding, and Xiao Gang's address written on a paper. "Go to him, tell him I sent you. He will find you a house to rent, a real one, with a door." The oldest boy did not take the money at first. He was about 14 and he stood there working out what a person wants who hands 22 homeless children 500 yuan, and he could not find it, and not being able to find it frightened him more than the winter did. His name was Qinji. I knew that name. In my first life, in a magazine, in a decade none of these people can imagine. There was a photograph of a man who ran half the docks in the south and had a great many people frightened of him. He had this face and this name and he had started, the article said, on the street in a northeastern city in the early 70s. I looked at a 14-year-old boy, holding 500 yuan, like it was a live animal, and I thought, not this time. "Take it," I said. "And put every one of them in school when the papers are sorted. I will handle the papers." Small things happened around all of that, and I want them in here too, because the small things are what a life is. I traded Xu Min a bag of lotus root for a bolt of factory second cloth with no coupon needed, and she went around beaming for a week, as though she had robbed me. Gao Yun brought a boar down to the brigade on his own, and the aunties made an enormous fuss of me, and I stopped it. "He killed it," I said, "not me." "Say his name." They said his name. And then somebody sighed and said what a shame it was. Such a good young man, and no children in him, and Gao Yun looked at the middle distance with the expression of a man lying in a bed of his own making. Du Han announced that he intended to stay in Yu2 village forever, and when asked why, said the word Yu, and then said he had meant the cooking. The neighboring brigades started coming to Li Sheng about the reapers. He came to my gate to ask, formally, hat in hand, because the machines were mine and everybody in the commune knew it. "Lend them," I said. "Do not take money. Ho ho. Take fish. Liu Jiakun has ponds. Dutu has a mountain. I did not want cash out of my neighbors. I wanted a standing arrangement that put protein on 800 plates and made 3 brigades feel like they owed us. They sent barrels. Carp of 10 to 30 gin, alive, and Li Sheng let me pick first in front of everybody, and Xia Yu made a sour soup out of the head that I have thought about in 3 different provinces since. I should explain what that thing on my neck actually costs, because I have made it sound free, and it is not. There are 3 prices and I paid all of them every week for 2 years. The first is blood. It opens with mine and nothing else, which means that every time I want to put something away or take something out, I open my own finger. In a village, with hands that are in soil all day. I have had that thumb go septic twice and had to explain it as a splinter. The second is that I cannot use it in front of anybody. Not once. Not for a second. That sounds small. It is the largest thing in my life. It means that on the day my house was on fire and my arms did not work, I nearly died with a farm's worth of medicine 6 inches from my mouth. It means that in a courtyard behind a locked gate I had to break 4 men by hand while standing next to a shed full of weapons I could have had in my palm, because Josie was watching. Every plan I have ever made in this life starts with the same question, and the question is not what do I have. It is who is looking, and the third price is the spring. It fills at its own speed. I have measured it. It is a bowl a day, near enough, and it does not care what I want. That mouthful I got on the floor of my burning kitchen was 3 days of it, and I spent the following week very carefully not falling off anything, because there was nothing left in the basin but wet stone. So when people say afterward that I had it easy, that I was carrying a fortune on a string the whole time, I do not argue. I just think about lying face down on a kang with a ceiling on fire, biting through my own lip to open a door. The fruit came in that winter, which should have been impossible, and I've never worked out how much time actually runs inside that place. Bananas. Oranges. Grapes with the blooms still on them. In the northeast of this country, in this decade, a banana is a rumor. Zosi took everything I brought and asked for more in a voice that had gone slightly unsteady, and paid several yuan a gin without a word of argument. Money for lying down. That is what I called it in my own head, and I have never found a better description. Then Gao Yum brought me a page of numbers. Off the set, he said. 2 nights ago it went up to the province and came back. Nobody could read it. I looked at it for a while. It was not a language problem. It was a substitution laid over a book code, and the book was a published one, and the giveaway was in how often certain groups repeated at the head of a line. It took me a little over an hour. I handed him the plain text and he read it standing up in my kitchen, and I watched his face go through several countries. He did not ask me how. He folded the paper, put it inside his jacket, said, "I have to go," and was out of the door. He was gone 6 days. When he came back he did not tell me anything about where he had been, and I did not ask. And about 3 weeks later a great many officials in that province stopped being officials. U2 Brigade was named an advanced collective in December. The commune sent down the certificate and, with it, 2 recommendation places for the Worker Peasant Soldier University. Just of them was mine. Li Sheng came to my house to tell me, and he was so pleased he could not sit down. I turned it down. He actually put his hand flat on the table. "Hoa, do you understand what this is? This is the city. This is out. 4 years I have watched people. I know what it is," I said. I am not taking it. I could not explain it to him. Here is what I could not say. The Worker Peasant Soldier Universities took you on a recommendation and gave you a paper, and in a very small number of years that paper was going to be worth considerably less than the examination the whole country had stopped holding. And when it came back, I intended to sit it and go to the best school in the country on a number, not a favor. "Give it to the brigade," I said. "Let the members decide. And uncle, do me one kindness. Make it very clear that I refused it, so that nobody in this village spends the next 4 years thinking I took something from their son." He gave both places to the brigade to allocate. Jiang Ji found out about it within the day, and by evening she was at Shu Min's store with an armful. Malt extract. Sugar. Liquor. Dakian men's cigarettes. She put it all on the table and asked for the recommendation place, out loud, in the plainest words anyone has ever used. "Auntie," she said, "I know Uncle Wang is very busy. I only want him to remember me when he is thinking about the 2 places. And a little something for the household is only proper between comrades." Translation. Take the liquor and put my name on the list. Yu Min has spent 51 years in a village where everybody says everything sideways. She heard it the way you hear your own name. She took that girl by the shoulders and pushed her back out through her own gate. "That is a bribe," she said, on the step, at a volume the whole lane could hear. "Take your things, Dal. If you come back here with them I will report you myself." I caught up with Jiang Ji about 200 meters down the lane, which is exactly as far as I had judged she would get before the crying stopped and the thinking started. I want to lay this one out properly, because it is the best piece of work I did in Yuto village, and I did not lay a finger on anybody. 200 yuan, I said, and I will tell you why that failed. She stared at me with her eyes still wet. "Why would you help me?" "Because I like money," I said, "and because you are going to fail anyway, and I would rather be paid for watching." She believed that instantly. That is the part I had counted on. A person who thinks everybody is for sale finds it very restful to meet somebody who agrees. She paid me. In cash, in a lane, at night. Li Sheng is a stump, I said. He has no authority to move a recommendation place, and he never did. Anything he takes from you he keeps, and you get nothing. Go over him. Go to the commune secretary directly. He is the one who signs. Every word of that was true. Here's what I did not add. I had asked Xu Min about the commune secretary 2 months earlier over a bag of lotus root, and Xu Min had said, with enormous disapproval, that the man was so straight he squeaked, and that in the middle of the current campaign he was looking for exactly one thing. Example. Jiang Ji went to the commune 4 days later with sugar and liquor and a request. The cadres brought her back to Yutu village in the afternoon in the front of a jeep. Attempted bribery of a commune official during a rectification campaign. She was not going to prison. She was going to the farm. For re-education through labor, for a period to be determined by her attitude. Li Sheng could not keep the delight off his face and did not try. She stood in that yard with the whole brigade around her and looked for me in the crowd. I know what went through her head because Wei Feng told Wu Han, months later, in a great deal of detail, in the hope that it would buy him something. She had gone over it on the way back in the jeep, step by step, the way you do. The bribe had been her own idea. She had chosen the gifts herself. She had picked the commune over the brigade herself because the brigade leader was a stump. Because a girl in a lane had told her he was a stump. Because that girl liked money and had taken 200 yuan and had explained the whole thing with the bored expression of somebody selling directions. She had paid me. That is the part she kept coming back to. She had put the notes in my hand herself, at night. And she had walked away feeling clever, because she had bought information from a greedy person, and greedy people are safe. And then she found me in that crowd. I did not smile. I want that understood, because it would have been so easy and it would have been so much worse. I stood at the back next to Shimen with my hands in my sleeves and I looked at her the way you look at weather. It was watching her work out that there was nothing she could say. Not one word of it was false. Li Sheng genuinely had no authority over a recommendation place. The commune secretary genuinely did sign them. Every single thing I told her was true and she had paid me for it and there was no crime anywhere in it. And if she stood up in that yard and told 800 people that Li Hua had advised her, the only thing 800 people would hear was that she had gone to the commune with liquor. Her mouth opened once. Then it closed. I have thought about that a great deal since. There are people I have put on the ground with my hands and none of them looked at me like that. She came over my wall at 10 that night with a dagger. I had heard her at the gate. I could have been at the far end of the mountain before she got the yard door open, and if I am honest I let her come in because I wanted to see what she would do. What I did not plan for was Gao Lin. That girl came out of the second room at a dead run and got in front of me, not beside. With her arms out, the way you do it when you have not been trained and your entire body has decided something on its own. The blade opened her forearm from the wrist halfway to the elbow. I do not remember crossing the yard. I took the dagger with my foot and I put Jiangji on the ground and I did not hit her, because Go Lin was making a noise behind me and my hands had gone stupid. I got her inside and packed the wound with something off a shelf that does not exist, and the bleeding stopped in about 4 seconds. Gao Lin looked at her own arm. First then she looked at me. Then, with blood still on her sleeve, that lunatic said, "Sister Hua, can I have some of that for my brother? He gets shot quite often." The brigade wanted Jiangji handed to the police for attempted murder. I said no. In prison, I said, to Li Sheng, in the dark. She is fed and warm and nobody can touch her. On the farm she is where the commune put her and it is very hard to hurt somebody in a prison. He looked at me for a long moment and then he wrote it up as a brigade and commune matter. The commune ruled that she pay 100 yuan to me and 100 to Jiao Lin and go to the farm as scheduled, and the brigade heard the ruling readout over a distribution of pork that had not been eaten yet, which is the way news should always be delivered. About 10 days later, I went to the farm at night. I put the whole dormitory to sleep, which is 30 women on one long kang. And I walked down that row with a lamp. I found what I was looking for in about 4 minutes. There was a pouch sewn into the waistband of her underclothes. Lo, where a body searched by another woman would find it and a search by anybody else would not. Everything she had left was in it. The money the Shens had let her keep. What was left of the 1800 from the clothes. Every last grain coupon. I cut it out with a knife and took all of it. In the morning, she woke up and found the pouch open and empty, and she went off like a bomb. She accused every woman on that kang. She brought the farm cadres. She had them turn out 30 people's bedding in the cold. They found nothing, of course. And that is the end of Zhongji in this account, so I will finish her here. She had been sent to the farm by the commune, which meant nobody there had to be polite to her. She had accused every woman she slept beside of theft, which meant nobody there was going to be. She had no money, so she could not buy an easier task or an extra bowl. She hauled manure through the winter on a farm ration with 30 women who hated her. Somebody told me, a long time afterward, that she had said out loud that it would have been easier to be dead. I am not going to pretend I felt nothing when I heard that. I felt that she had ordered 4 men to pour kerosene around a house with Xiaoyu asleep inside it, and that I had needed a mouthful of impossible water to get out of that room, and that Gao Lin still has a white line up her forearm. The commune did that. Not me. I only ever told her the truth about who signs the paperwork. Winter preparation in the Northeast is not a chore. It is the whole of December, and if you get it wrong you find out in February. Cotton, padded jackets, and wood. Enormous quantities of wood, which meant going deep, past the ridge where the brigade stops going because of what lives up there. Dio Lin came with me every time. Her arm healed white and straight and she stopped noticing it. The black soil, meanwhile, had answered my question about ginseng. I had put 1 root in and I took out something that no honest mountain in this province could have produced in under 50 years. Zhou Si paid 800 for the first one. He was paying 500 to everybody else and he told me so himself. Which is a thing about that man I never expected. But sister, he said, 2 at a time. No more. This county cannot absorb more than 2 a year without somebody official asking where the mountain is ass. I have taken business advice from worse sources. That same week the reclamation station had a pile that stopped my heart. Books. Old ones, hand-copied, medical, the kind of thing families had kept in a box for 4 generations. Somebody's household had been turned over and this is what came out of it, and it was stacked next to the furnace because the furnace is where things went that year. I bought the lot by weight and did not sleep well afterward. There's one thing about that winter I have to put down, because if I leave it out this whole account turns into a list of people I hit. On the 21st of December, when the wind had been coming off the mountain for 4 days and the whole village was eating corn cake and salted cabbage, I closed my gate and Jie Yu and Gao Lin and I had a feast. I brought it out after dark with the shutters barred, which is the only way I ever brought anything out. Dally. The good cut braised down until the fat had gone to jelly. A whole chicken with mushrooms. Fish. In December, in a landlocked county, which took some explaining and got the explanation of a fishmonger in the city and a very fast bicycle. White rice. Not mixed. Man, salt. With nothing in it, and there was a quantity of it that would have fed a household for a week. And oranges. Au held one in both hands for about a minute before she would peel it. I have had one before, she said. At New Year Day. When I was 9, Dao Lin ate 3 and then lay on the kang with her hands on her stomach and said that if she died now, it was fine. Outside that door, in every house down the lane, people were eating corn cake. That is the truth of it and I am not going to dress it up. Dad hand out oranges to 800 people, because I could not. Because a girl who produces 200 oranges in December is a girl the county comes to talk to. So I fed my people behind a barred shutter and gave the village pork through the front gate in daylight, and I have made my peace with that arrangement, mostly. What I remember is not the food. What I remember is that Xia Yu cried, quietly, with an orange in her hand, and would not say why, and about 2 years later told me, her mother used to buy 1 orange at New Year and cut it into 6 pieces. I want to record one night from that December, because it is the one I would keep if I could only keep one. I went to the cowshed at about 2 in the morning with a bundle, padded jackets and quilts for Chen Guang and his wife. And I had made them a particular way. The outside was old cloth, worn, patched, the kind of thing that would draw no eye at all in a village. The wadding inside was new. Because a sent-down element in a new coat is a sent-down element, somebody reports. The old woman understood it. The second she had it in her hands. She turned that jacket over twice, and looked at the patched outside, and then she sat down on the floor of the cowshed and cried in a way that had nothing to do with being cold. She thought of that too. She kept saying to her husband. She even thought of that. I got out fast. I have said I do not handle it well and it remains true. There were pine cones on the tops of the tall pines and nobody in Yutu village would climb for them. So Gao Lin and I brought down 2 full sacks. Pine nuts roast better than melon seeds and everybody knows it, and nobody has any. I gave them out. Du Min, Xu Fengxia, the old hands, the family with the little girl. Chestnuts and sunflower seeds came back the other way within 2 days, which is how an economy actually works. Sun Wan said, to a group, that with all my hunting I could have given meat instead of pine nuts. 3 separate aunties turned on her at once and I did not have to say a word. That is what a year of pork buys you. He gang got one of the university places. Out of the whole county, dozens recommended, 3 went. He was one of the 3, and he had been down here for 4 years and had watched 8 people leave, and when the notice came he had to go and stand behind the compound for a while. The aunties descended on him within the hour. Is Min beat them off with a broom. He came to my gate the day before he left, awkwardly, to ask if I could get him candy coupons for the train. I sold them to him at exactly what I paid. Then I wheeled out my bicycle, the terrible one with the mismatched wheels, and put the handlebars in his hands. You have got 14 kilometers to the bus with 2 bags, Sister Sue. I will pay. You will not, I said and went inside. I want that place directly next to the 200 yuan I took off Zhangji in a lane, because both of those were me, on the same street, in the same month, and I have never seen any contradiction in it at all. He came back the next evening and asked me to walk behind the house with him. I knew what it was going to be about 6 steps in, and I let him say it, because a man who has worked up to that deserves to be allowed to finish. I have liked you for a long time, he said. I am going to the city. I am asking now because after tomorrow, I will not have the standing tattooed as a friend, I said. Nothing else. I am sorry, Din, he nodded. He said, thank you for the bicycle. He shook my hand like we were signing something, and he got on the bus in the morning and he never once made it strange. That is worth writing down, because a great many men in this account did not manage it. The city, when I went down after New Year, had a fever. A work team had come from above and was going through the departments. My page of numbers was in the middle of that somewhere, and I could see the shape of it in what Xiaogang was not saying. The lightning investigation had died quietly. Sun Cheng had larger problems than a dead sun. Do not go near anything right now, Xiaogang said, sliding the money across. Anything, Sister Hua. I mean it. 2 days later there was gunfire in the middle of the city in the middle of the afternoon. I saw the end of it from a street corner. Duvia. Operational team going through a courtyard at speed, and 2 of them were Gaiyun and Wu Han, and they went past me without a flicker, and I went the other way like a sensible person. Then Chen Shi found me. He had been waiting outside the guest house, and he had that face 14-year-olds get when they have decided to be useful and are frightened it will not be enough. Sister Hua. I found a place with things in it. What kind of things? Old things, boxes. He hesitated. It is brother's son's old yard, the one that got cleared out. I had emptied that yard myself. I had been through every room. Show me, Diff. He took me over the back wall and across the courtyard and stopped at the dry well. I stood and looked at it for a while. I had walked past that well twice. Twice, in one night, carrying crates, with the whole compound asleep and all the time in the world. It had a stone lid, half broken, with weeds growing up through the crack, and both times I had looked at it and my brain had said, dry well, and moved on. That is the most useful lesson anybody has ever taught me, and it was taught to me by a 14-year-old. A thing that has looked useless for long enough stops being looked at. How did you know? The weeds, he said. There are weeds in the crack, but there is no dust on the lid. Somebody lifts it. There was a ladder down the shaft and a chamber cut into the side at the bottom. Dry, boarded, bigger than my kitchen. Scrolls and oilcloth. Ceramics packed in straw. Medical manuscripts older than the ones I had pulled out of the reclamation station, some of them older than anything I had ever held. Ding. And gold in bars, in a wooden chest with rope handles. More than I had taken out of brother's son's house and Sun Ping's farmhouse put together. I want to state the next part exactly. A 14-year-old boy who slept under matting against a wall, in a winter that had already killed some of his friends, had climbed down that ladder alone, seen that room, climbed back up, and gone to find me. He had not taken a single piece. He had not even taken the smallest one, and there were bars in that chest he could have carried out in one hand, and lived on for 5 years. I was still on the ladder when I heard voices in the courtyard above. I got Chenji behind me and went into the space, which is a thing I do perhaps twice a year, and never with anyone able to see me do it, and from in there I listened. There were about 15 men in that courtyard. And one voice was giving instructions. Brother Zhang, we go tonight, through the tunnel. There will be people waiting on the other side. Once we are in the R country, nobody can touch us. Sun Cheng, in person, in the yard of his own dead subordinate, on the last night before he left the country, coming back for the one thing he had not moved yet. I would like to say that I went straight for help. I did not. I put every single crate, scroll, bar and manuscript into the space first, working in the dark with 15 men breathing 40 feet above my head, and only when that chamber was completely bare did I go up the ladder and out over the wall. I did not go to the duty desk at the Public Security Bureau either. That man had been 3 steps ahead of an entire investigation for 2 years. And there is only one way that happens. I need Gao Yun, I told the guard. Personally. Not a message. Wake him. He came out into the yard, buttoning his jacket with his face gray. We lost him, he said. Before I opened my mouth, the big one. He went 2 hours ago, and we do not know how he knew. And I have to report tonight that we have a leak. He has not gone anywhere, I said. Come and get him on. They took all 15 in the well chamber and the tunnel, which turned out to come up in a stand of poplars outside the city wall. My statement was very short. I had been walking. I saw men going into an empty compound at night. I thought it looked wrong. I followed. Cheng Xiuan arrived at 3 in the morning and looked at me across that courtyard, with an expression I was not equipped for. And Gao Yun looked at Cheng Xiuan looking at me, and something went across his face that I had never seen there before, and did not identify for another 2 months. 9. Comrade Su, said the section chief, closing his notebook. The state thanks you. This counts as merit though, I said. Does it not? Do not forget to write up the bonus. The bureau found out about the well chamber the following week, because Sun Cheng told them about it himself in an interrogation room, in detail, hoping to trade. They went down the ladder with lamps and found a stone room with nothing in it at all. They did think of me. Of course they thought of me. And then somebody sensible pointed out that we are discussing several dozen crates, a chest of bullion, and a single 18-year-old girl who was standing in the courtyard talking to officers within 4 minutes, and the file went into a drawer. Sun Cheng was executed in the spring. On the way there, he took 9 provincial officials with him. Shinji was waiting for me outside the bureau at dawn, which meant he had been standing in the cold for 5 hours. Did they take everything? He said. I found it for you, and they took it in day. They took an empty room, I said. He looked up at me. And then, slowly, for the first time since I had met him, that boy grinned like a child. I put 500 yuan in his hand. He gave it back. I do not want money, he said. Sister Hoa, can you get us residence papers? Real ones. All 22. D. Because without papers they will not take us in a school, and school is the only thing that changes anything, and I have thought about it a lot. 14. Living under matting. Yes, I said. I can do that. I brought them sweets and biscuits that afternoon, and 22 faces filled the doorway of a rented room with an actual door on it. Shinji would not take a biscuit. I am grown, he said. Give it to the little ones and Shinji. I put it in his hand and closed his fingers on it. As long as Sister Hua has something to eat, you are not going hungry. That is not a favor, that is just how it is now. He ate the biscuits standing up with his back to the room so nobody could see his face. Then he said, to the wall, you will not go away, will you? And I said no, and that is a promise I have kept, and one of these days I am going to have to explain to that boy why I knew to make it. There was a couple in the state restaurant that spring who provided me with a great deal of entertainment. The boy could not stop looking over. His girl noticed, obviously, because they always notice, and she chose to deal with it by saying the word fox loudly enough to reach my table. Vixen. Whirlwind. The whole traditional vocabulary. Comrade, I said. He is looking at the food. He is looking at you. He is looking, I said, at 4 bowls of rice, a plate of braised pork, a fish, and a bowl of noodles, all of which are mine, all of which I am going to eat. Dell. If your man is drawn to that, your problem is not my face. The boy, who had the survival instincts of a moth, chose that moment to lean over and ask whether I would consider seeing him. I pointed at my table with my chopsticks. Can you feed that? He was back in his seat before I finished the sentence, and his girl spent the rest of the meal being extremely nice to him, and I ate everything. The electricity came to Yuto village in March. They put the poles in over 4 days, and the brigade followed the work team down the road like a wedding. When the lights came on in the brigade office, there was a noise out of 800 people that I have never heard before or since. And Li Sheng stood underneath the bulb with his hat off. Because we cut the harvest 11 days early. Because 2 engines came off a scrap heap. I stood at the back and thought, right, next we get a telephone. Gao Yun and Wu Han came back from wherever they had been in April, thinner by a good deal, and Wu Han went straight past me into my kitchen without saying hello to anybody. Is she cooking? He said. You have been gone 11 weeks, I said. You have not asked how anyone is. Sister Hua, is she cooking? Yea Yu made him noodles and he sat there eating with an expression of religious relief, and I looked at him for a while, and then at her, and I thought, oh dear, Zhang Siwan brought the biggest award I ever got out of the county. 500 yuan, plus, coupons, plus, a pennant, for the well and the 15 men and the tunnel. I took it, and then I asked for something else. There are 22 children in the city, with no residence papers, I said. I want papers. Doll. All of them, into a school? He said yes before I had finished. Not after consideration. Immediately, with a kind of relief, as if I had finally asked him for the thing he had been hoping I would ask for. Later I found out what he had told himself about me. Died. He had decided that all my grasping about money was so that I could hand it to children. I would like to correct the record. I am extremely fond of money. I like the weight of it. The children were separate. Both things were true at once, and only one of them made him feel better. The village discovered around then that I had coupons. Cloth coupons, sugar coupons, coupons in general, on account of a year of penance and translation fees. So people started coming to my gate to trade, and I traded, at rates that were fair and not generous, and sometimes for eggs. That is what finally finished it, I think. Not the boar. Not the rebirth. Collect. The day U2 village started coming to my door to swap coupons for eggs, I stopped being the strange Beijing girl at the foot of the mountain and became a person you go and see. The city had changed shape while I was not looking. Brother Sun was gone. Sun Cheng was in a cell, and the entire market had come loose. Xiaogang and his friends had walked into that gap, and Xiaogang now had 4 men who called him boss and a lockup behind the tannery. He had also, and I want this on the record, kept every single rule I gave him. No women. No opium. No selling anything to anybody with a foreign passport. Honest waits even in an alley. They laugh at me, he said. The others. They say I trade like a shopkeeper. They will be arrested in 3 years, I said, and you will not be. He took me to the state restaurant to say thank you, insisted on paying, and then watched me order and went to color I can only describe as thoughtful. I went and saw the children after. Diz. They had a proper room now, 22 of them, and the papers had come through and 11 of them were in a school. Chen Ji had been cooking for the little ones. He had been boiling everything in water, because nobody had ever shown him anything else. I spent an afternoon teaching a 14-year-old boy to render fat and layer flavor and salt at the right moment, and he took it more seriously than anything I have ever taught anybody. And I hired a woman from the lane to come in daily at 50 yuan a month so that he could stop being 22 people's mother and go to school himself. Then I went back to the county and asked Qing Xuan to lunch. I owed him. He had done the papers in 9 days and had asked for nothing, and I do not like carrying that. Comrade Lu tried to stop it. She appeared in his office doorway with a folder and a great many urgent matters, and Qing Xuan told her, in a voice like a closing drawer, that the matters could wait until 2. We went to the county cinema after, because the film was on and it seemed rude not to. And 4 rows back, sitting bolt upright in the dark like 2 owls, were Gao Yun and Wu Han. I did not spot them. Xia Yu told me afterward, because Wu Han told her. Because Wu Han cannot hold anything. Their reasoning, as reported, was that our cabbage was not going to be dug up by a passing pig. Wu Han came at me directly outside the cinema, which is the only method he has. Sister Hao, are you and Officer Cheng together? No. Because he was carrying your bag. He processed residence papers for 22 homeless children in 9 days. I said, and would not take a fen for it, so I bought him a bowl of noodles. Wu Han, if buying a man noodles is a marriage in your world, you are engaged to 11 aunties. Behind him, Gao Yun let out a breath he had clearly been holding since the newsreel. 2 days later, he asked me to walk behind the house. He had a parcel under his arm and he was wearing a suit. Actual suit, and leather shoes, in a village, on a Tuesday, in the middle of the spring planting. He had written to Beijing for them. He had waited 11 days for a package to come across the country so that when he said this, he would not be saying it in a padded jacket with mud on it. That is the detail that undid me. Not the words. The 11 days of planning. He had also, I found out later, made Wu Han listen to the sentence 4 times and give notes. Wu Han's notes had been, and I am quoting, that it was too short and he should say something about her eyes. Gao Yun had rejected that on the grounds that if he tried to talk about my eyes I would laugh at him, which is the single most accurate assessment that man has ever made of our relationship. Li Hua, he said, I want to be with you. I let him stand there for a moment, because I am not a kind person. I want to describe what was actually going on in my head, since I have been honest about most other things. I was frightened. Not of him. In my first life, the only man who ever wanted me paid 200 yuan for a sack. 13 months. A house with my name on the paperwork. A mountain, a village that would stand in front of me. 80,000 yuan on the other side of a piece of stone. None of it had done one single thing about this. Because when a man in a good suit says a kind sentence in a quiet voice, something in me goes very still. And waits, and starts working out what it is going to cost. So I did what I do. I made it a transaction, because a transaction I understand. I have conditions, I said. Anything. 1. If you ever let me down, or if you ever bring another woman into this, I will break both your legs. Not as a figure of speech. I want you to understand that I am completely capable of it and that nobody would ever be able to prove it. Go Yon, who had watched me take a bear apart, considered this seriously and nodded. I accept. Good. Then I took a fistful of his brand new collar, pulled him down, and kissed him. He made a noise like a man stepping into cold water. That is a seal, I said, letting go. You are mine now. It should be stamped. He stood there with his ears burning and the parcel forgotten under his arm and an expression of total structural collapse. Then he remembered the parcel. Inside it was a watch. A Swiss one. Hua Omega. I knew what it was the second I saw the face, and I want to put the numbers down because in this decade the numbers are the sentence. Ordinary domestic wristwatch is 100 yuan and an industrial coupon that most people never see in their lives. A wedding in a village is measured in whether the household can produce one. It is one of the 4 things, and for a great many families it is the thing they do not manage. This was not one of the 4 things. This was several hundred yuan of foreign steel, and there is no coupon on earth that produces it, which means somebody in Beijing spent favors. Where did you get this? Beijing, he said. It took a while. How long a while? He looked at the wall. Since the fire, he said. The fire was in September. I stood in a lane at the back of a house at the foot of a mountain and did that arithmetic, and I want to be very clear that up to that point in my life, nobody had ever spent 7 months on me. I put it on. I have worn it every day since. Including days when I definitely should not have, including one day in a river, including a day I am not going to write about at all. I did not hide any of it, which surprised the entire village. I gathered everybody I cared about in my own yard the following evening and told them straight out, because I have watched what happens to women in this decade whose relationships are conducted quietly, and it is never the man who pays for it. Wu Han's reaction was immediate and heartfelt. Sister Hua. What pig has carried off our cabbage? Then he saw Gao Yun standing behind me, and his whole face fell off. Brother Yun. Brother Yun. But you are. Do not finish that sentence, said Gao Yun. Teo Lin looked at her brother for a long moment and then shook her fist at him, an actual fist, in front of everybody. You are not good enough for her. I know, he said. Do you know? I know, because Sister Hua is the strongest, cleverest. Lin, he said. I am aware. I have been aware for a year. He told me who he was that night, sitting on my wall with his suit jacket over his arm. Special operations. Directly under the center, his grandfather had commanded a division. His father held a post in a ministry and his mother held another one, and the Liu family was, by any measurement that mattered in Beijing, considerably heavier than the Shen family. I let all of that go past me and asked the only question worth asking. Your people are going to want to know where I came from, I said. And the answer is a nowhere clerk who severed ties with her adoptive parents in a newspaper notice. Are they going to accept a girl out of nothing? He did not reassure me. He did not tell me they would love me. He did not say that class background does not matter, which is the kind of thing men say when they have never actually asked their mothers. My life is mine to decide, he said. And then, after a moment, and if they cannot manage it, they will find that out. I have known that man to be wrong about a number of things. He was not wrong about that one. Yu Xiaowan went to the farm about a fortnight later, and I would feel worse about how much I enjoyed it if she had not spent 2 years making other women's lives smaller. She had been quietly available to a number of people in the brigade for a long time, and Sun Wan had known about it and had been charging her for the silence, which is somehow the ugliest part of the whole arrangement. What ended it was Li Jia's wife. She came round the corner of the drying yard at the wrong moment and she did not shout. She got both hands into Zhao Wan's hair and took her to the ground in front of about 40 people at the end of the working day. I could not see. There were too many people in front of me. So I climbed the elm at the edge of the yard, and Gao Lin came up after me, and then Sha Yu came up after her, and the three of us sat in that tree like crows and watched the entire thing from an excellent angle. I regret nothing. The commune came for Xiaowan on the Thursday. Same farm. Same re-education through labor. 2 of them gone inside 3 months, and both of them delivered there by their own hands, and I want somebody to notice that I did not touch either one at the end. I only ever made sure the right people were watching at the right moment. That is the whole trick, if anybody wants it. Villages do not punish. Villages report. You simply have to make sure the thing being reported is true. The last thing that happened before the spring planting was a boar hunt, and Ji Yuyun rigged it. He divided the beat teams himself, and he did it with a completely straight face, and somehow the divisions came out with him and me alone on the upper ridge and everybody else half a mountain away. I said nothing. I let him think he had been subtle. Halfway up, on wet leaf litter, I put my foot on a root that rolled. I could have caught myself. I want to be clear about that. I have been thrown off horses and hit by a boar and I know exactly how to get a foot underneath me. I went into his arms instead, and I stayed there. He went absolutely rigid. His heart was going like a drum under my ear. I looked up at him and he looked down at me with the face of a man who has been handed something breakable, and I took hold of his collar again and kissed him properly. And that time he did not stand there like a post. That time he participated with enthusiasm. When I finally let go of him, he had to put a hand on a tree. And because I am the way I am, I took the opportunity, while he was not in a position to object, to check. Briskly, professionally. With one hand. Gay Yun made a sound like a kettle being lifted off a stove. You are absolutely fine, I informed him. Congratulations, our future happiness is assured. Then I picked up the machete and went off up the ridge and left him standing under that tree with his eyes shut, saying something to himself in the general direction of the sky. He was no use for about 20 minutes. We took 3 big boar between us that afternoon and a scatter of piglets, and I only wanted one thing out of the whole day. The suckling pig, I said. I want the little one. All of it goes to the brigade, said Li Sheng at the weighing, except whatever Comrade Su takes, 1 piglet. He looked at 300 gin of pork and then at me. Hawa, 1 piglet. I have money, I said. The brigade has 800 people. What am I going to do with a boar? Look at it. That night half the village turned up at my gate with things. Eggs. A jar of pickle. Somebody's daughter brought a bundle of dried mushrooms and would not say who sent her. What I did not mention to the brigade was that Gao Yun and I had gone back up the mountain at midnight and carried the largest boar down between us and put the whole thing in my kitchen. I am generous. I am not a saint. There is a difference and I have never once pretended otherwise. So that is where I had got to. 13 months after I woke up in Beijing under a water stain with a boy screaming about breakfast. Let me put the 2 ends of it side by side, because I have never been able to do it out loud. 13 months ago I was a girl who had been beaten to death in a mountain hut by a man who paid 200 yuan for me, and who had spent the entire life before that saying thank you to people who were eating her. Now, I had a house with my name on the paperwork, a mountain that fed 800 people, a machine with my hands' marks on it cutting the commune's wheat, a village that came to my gate to trade, 2 women who would step in front of a knife for me and one who had, and a man in a pegging suit who had waited 11 days for a package so he could ask me properly. I had also stopped counting the money. That is the part I did not expect. There is a point where it goes from being a number to being a fact about the weather. See, you cooked that piglet with the skin on and honey in the glaze, and she did it in a mud stove. She had rebuilt herself with 3 bricks and an opinion. Helen ate until she had to lie down. Wu Han arrived uninvited, having smelled it from the compound, and I let him in because a man who runs 800 meters for pork is a man who knows what matters. Zhao Yun sat on my step and did not eat much because he had been watching Wu Han watch the Yu and had reached the same conclusion I had reached in April. 2 men came at the end for the crackling and stayed an hour and told 4 stories about people who had died in 1959, which is how she says she loves you. That was the evening. 5 people and a pig and a burnt wall. And I had not gone looking for the Shen family once. That is the thing. 13 months and I never wrote a letter and I never asked a question. And I told myself every single time it came up that I did not care, that they had lost me, that they had taken a stranger into my room without checking, and that I owed a family like that precisely nothing. Here's what I did not know while I was sitting in my yard eating suckling pig. In Beijing, in a house I had never seen, a woman named Deng Fen had stopped sleeping. She had a photograph of a nurse from a maternity ward and a description of a piece of jade on a red string, and she had been carrying both of those things around a city of 7 million people for a year, showing them to strangers. She had been to the hospital 11 times. She had been to the police 4. She had sat in the office of a man whose job it was to tell her, kindly, that a baby put down in 1954 does not come back. And she had gone home and got up the next morning and gone somewhere else. Her sons had started taking turns going with her because she had begun getting on buses without deciding where she was going first. They were looking. They had never stopped looking. They had been looking the entire time I was standing in a village telling myself that they had not. That a family who takes in a stranger without checking deserves nothing. That I was not the one who had lost anybody. I was so certain about that. And in a different room, in a different building, a file with my name on it had been opened for the 4th time. Li Hua. 18. Rural, educated youth, U2 brigade, background clean. No unit affiliations, no foreign contacts, no relatives abroad. Decide. Broke a python's skull with a farm knife. Took 12 armed foreign agents alone, with 1 weapon she picked up on the ground. Rebuilt an unrecoverable field radio in a day and a half. Read a book cipher in 1 hour that the provincial section could not read in 3 days. Was standing in a courtyard talking to officers 4 minutes after several dozen crates of state evidence vanished out of a sealed room, and has never once been able to be connected to any of it. The recommendation at the bottom of that page was 2 lines long. And I did not see it for another year. Did not investigate her further at brigade level. Bring her in. I found all of that out later. Every word of it. On the night I am describing I knew none of it. I sat in my own yard, in a village at the foot of a mountain, with a full stomach and a burnt wall and a very good watch. And I looked at 4 people arguing about crackling, and I thought I had got away clean. That is the thing about being the person who always sees the trap coming. You get very good at watching other people's hands. You get so good at it that you stop noticing there is a second table, and other people are sitting at it, and they have been playing for 13 months without you. A woman in Beijing was showing strangers a drawing of a piece of jade. A file in a locked room had my name on it and a sentence at the bottom that was not a question. And I sat in my yard eating pork. The jade was warm under my collar. It is always warm right before I take something. For 13 months I had assumed it was warning me about other people's houses.